3 years ago, Isabella Cruz vanished from Lorenzo Vieri's bed without a trace, the only woman who ever ran from the most dangerous man in New York. Tonight, in a rain-soaked Manhattan street, he discovered why. The twins in her stroller had his eyes, his jawline, his blood. One look shattered 3 years of secrets and ignited a storm that would consume them both. Because Lorenzo Vieri doesn't lose what belongs to him. And his children he never knew existed, belong to him now. If you want to see how this explosive reunion unfolds, stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches. Polsik. The rain came down in sheets, turning Manhattan streets into rivers of neon and shadow. Isabella Cruz hunched over the stroller, her jacket doing little to protect the twins from the downpour as she half ran, half stumbled down Lexington Avenue. Her phone showed 8:47 p.m. The pharmacy closed at 9. "Mama, I'm cold," Mia whimpered from beneath the plastic rain cover. "I know, baby. Almost there." Isabella's voice cracked as she pressed forward, her sneakers splashing through puddles. Adrian's fever had spiked to 103 an hour ago. She'd used the last of the children's Tylenol that morning. Her paycheck from the diner wouldn't hit until Friday, but the pharmacist on duty, Mr. Chen, sometimes let her pay half now, half later. She had exactly $43 in her wallet and a prayer that it would be enough. The twins had just turned 3 last month. 3 years of running, 3 years of looking over her shoulder, 3 years of building a life from scraps and determination in a city that devoured the weak. 3 years since she'd fled Lorenzo Vieri's penthouse in the dead of night, knowing the secret growing inside her would either be her salvation or her destruction. She'd chosen to make it her salvation. Thunder cracked overhead as Isabella rounded the corner onto 68th Street. The pharmacy's lights blazed like a beacon 2 blocks ahead. She could make it. She always made it. Survival had become her superpower, the ability to stretch a dollar, to smile through exhaustion, to be invisible in a city of millions. Invisibility had kept them safe. Until tonight. The black SUV appeared without warning, sliding up beside her with the smooth precision of a predator cutting off prey. Isabella's heart stopped. Her hands tightened on the stroller handle as every instinct screamed, "Run." But she was a mother before she was a survivor. Running meant leaving the twins exposed. The rear door opened. Lorenzo Vieri stepped onto the rain-slicked pavement like he owned it. Because in this city, in this life, he did. 6'3" of tailored menace wrapped in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Isabella earned in 6 months. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from Carrara marble, all sharp angles and ruthless beauty. Eyes the color of espresso, cold and assessing. Eyes that had haunted her dreams for 3 years. He looked exactly the same. Dangerous, untouchable, devastating. Isabella. Her name on his lips was a bullet and a benediction. It's been a long time. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Every carefully constructed wall she'd built came crashing down as Lorenzo's gaze moved from her face to the stroller between them. The rain pounded, traffic hissed past. The world narrowed to this moment, this intersection where past and present collided with the force of destiny. Adrian coughed, a wet, rattling sound that pierced the night. Lorenzo's expression shifted. Something flickered behind those cold eyes as he took a step closer, his focus laser-sharp on the stroller. Isabella wanted to move, to shield them, to disappear into the storm, but her body had turned to stone. "How old?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "That's none of your... How old?" The command in those 2 words could have felled empires. Isabella's throat closed around the lies she'd rehearsed 1,000 times, the denials that had kept them safe. Lorenzo Vieri hadn't survived in the underworld by being stupid. He was already doing the math, counting back the months, connecting dots she'd spent 3 years keeping separate. He moved then, fluid and purposeful, closing the distance between them. Isabella's instinct was to run, but maternal override kept her rooted as Lorenzo crouched beside the stroller, his expensive suit absorbing rain without care. The plastic cover was fogged from the twins' breath. Lorenzo reached out with surprising gentleness and pulled it back. The world stopped. Mia stared up at him with eyes that mirrored his own, deep brown, intelligent, framed by impossibly long lashes. Her dark curls were plastered to her fevered cheeks. Beside her, Adrian lay listless, his small chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths. The resemblance was undeniable, devastating, absolute. Lorenzo Vieri, the man who controlled half of New York's criminal enterprises with an iron fist, the man who'd ordered executions without blinking, the man who felt nothing, stared at his children and felt everything shatter. Dio mio. The words escaped like a prayer or a curse. His hand trembled, actually trembled, as he reached toward Adrian's flushed face, then stopped, as though touching might break something precious. They're mine. It wasn't a question. Lorenzo, please. Isabella's voice cracked. They're sick. I need to get medicine. How long has he been like this? Lorenzo's focus snapped to Adrian with laser intensity. The child's lips were tinged blue, his breathing labored. Since this morning, but it got worse an hour ago. I just need to get to the pharmacy. Lorenzo stood abruptly, pulling his phone from his pocket. Marco, clear the pharmacy on 68th and Lex. Now. I don't care if people are inside. Get them out. Then get Dr. Castellano to my estate. Tell him to bring everything for pediatric respiratory infection. I need him there in 20 minutes. Mr. Vieri, I can't afford... He ended the call and turned to her, and the look in his eyes silenced every protest. This wasn't the cold businessman she remembered. This was something primal, dangerous, protective. This was a father who'd just discovered his children existed and found them in peril. Get in the car, Isabella. No, I'm not going anywhere with you. We've been fine without... Your son is burning up with fever and struggling to breathe. Your daughter is hypothermic. You're standing in a thunderstorm with $43 and desperation. His voice dropped to something lethal. Those are my children in that stroller. My blood. And they will have the best medical care available in the next 15 minutes, or I will burn this city down until they do. So I'll ask you once more, with what little patience I have left. Get in the car. Mia started crying, a weak, pitiful sound that tore through Isabella's chest. Adrian's breathing grew more labored. The choice between pride and survival wasn't really a choice at all. It never had been. Isabella nodded once, sharp and defeated. Lorenzo moved immediately, carefully lifting the stroller as though it contained the world's most precious cargo. Two men materialized from the SUV, dark suits, cold eyes, the kind of men who made problems disappear. They flanked Lorenzo as he secured the twins in the vehicle with a tenderness that seemed impossible from hands that had dealt death. Isabella climbed in after them, her wet clothes soaking the leather seats. Lorenzo slid in beside her, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. The door closed with a decisive thunk. Drive, Lorenzo commanded. Estate. Fast, but careful. The SUV pulled into traffic with smooth precision. Isabella kept her hands on the twins, as though her touch alone could anchor them to safety. Mia had stopped crying, her wide eyes fixed on Lorenzo with a child's uncanny ability to sense significance. Who that? She whispered to Isabella. Before Isabella could answer, Lorenzo spoke, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. I'm your father, Piccola, and I'm going to make sure you and your brother are safe. The simplicity of it, the absolute certainty, made Isabella's eyes burn with tears she refused to shed. 3 years of secrets unraveled in one sentence. Adrian coughed again, the sound worsening. Lorenzo's jaw tightened as he leaned forward, speaking rapid Italian into his phone. Isabella caught words. Dottore, bambini, subito. The drive took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of watching Lorenzo alternate between barking orders into his phone and checking Adrian's breathing with the focused intensity of someone used to controlling every variable. When Adrian's eyes fluttered closed, Lorenzo's hand shot out, gently tapping the boy's cheek. Stay awake, Filio. Just a little longer. Adrian's eyes opened, unfocused and glassy. Tired. I know, but you need to stay with me. Lorenzo's voice carried a command that even a sick 3-year-old responded to. Adrian's gaze fixed on his father's face with drowsy confusion. You're big, the boy mumbled. Despite everything, Lorenzo's mouth twitched. Yes, and you're going to be big too. The estate materialized through the rain like something from another world. Walls, gates, manicured grounds that seemed impossible in Manhattan's crowded landscape. But Lorenzo Vieri didn't play by normal rules. He owned a piece of old-world sovereignty in the heart of the city, a compound that housed his empire and enforced his law. The gates opened before they arrived. Security swarmed the vehicle as it pulled up to a mansion that looked like it had been transported stone by stone from Tuscany. Warm light spilled from tall windows. Staff appeared from nowhere, directed by Lorenzo's silent gestures. A man in his 60s rushed down the front steps, medical bag in hand, silver hair swept back from an intelligent face. Dr. Castellano, presumably. "Inside! Now!" Lorenzo had Adrian out of the stroller before Isabella could move, cradling the boy with surprising competence. "Isabella, bring Mia!" She wanted to argue, to assert some control over a situation that had spiraled completely beyond her grasp. But Adrian's labored breathing was all the motivation she needed. Isabella scooped Mia from the stroller and followed Lorenzo into the house. The interior was elegant, understated wealth, cream marble, dark wood, art that probably belonged in museums. But Isabella barely registered any of it as Lorenzo led them to a room that had been transformed into a medical suite in the time it took them to arrive. Dr. Castellano went to work immediately, his hands gentle but efficient as he examined Adrian. Lorenzo stood close, his presence a silent threat to anyone who might fail his son. The doctor pulled out monitoring equipment, a stethoscope, thermometer. "Pneumonia," he said after a tense 5 minutes. "Early stage but progressing. He needs antibiotics, breathing treatments, and careful monitoring for the next 48 hours. "Do it here," Lorenzo commanded. "Mr. Vieri, he should really be in a hospital. Here, I'll have whatever equipment you need delivered within the hour. But my children stay under my roof, under my protection." The doctor nodded, clearly familiar with arguing against immovable objects. "I'll need pediatric oxygen, nebulizer, IV fluids, and monitoring equipment. You'll have it all." Lorenzo turned to Isabella, who stood clutching Mia like a lifeline. "The doctor needs to examine your daughter. She's just cold and scared. Adrian's the one she's hypothermic and possibly sick as well. Let him examine her." The command in his voice left no room for argument. Isabella set Mia on the second exam table, running soothing hands through the girl's damp curls. "It's okay, baby. The doctor just wants to make sure you're healthy." Dr. Castellano's examination of Mia was mercifully brief. "She's fine. Cold, frightened, but no fever. She needs warm, dry clothes, food, and rest." A woman appeared in the doorway, late 50s, steel gray hair and a neat bun, kind eyes. "Mr. Vieri, I've prepared rooms as you requested." "Thank you, Maria. This is Isabella, and these are my children, Mia and Adrian. They'll be staying indefinitely. Isabella needs dry clothes. The children need everything, clothes, toys, whatever children their age require. Have it delivered by morning." Maria's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise she showed, before she nodded. "Of course, sir. Miss Cruz, if you'll come with me, we'll get you settled while the doctor works." "I'm not leaving, Adrian." "You're soaking wet and shivering," Lorenzo cut in. "You're no good to them if you collapse from hypothermia yourself. Maria will bring you back in clean, dry clothes in 10 minutes. Your son will still be here, still being treated, still safe." The logic was sound, even if Isabella hated it. She looked at Adrian, small and vulnerable on the exam table, monitors already being attached to his little body. Then at Mia, who clung to her leg with exhausted desperation. "Both of us," Isabella said firmly. "Mia stays with me." Lorenzo nodded once. "Go, quickly." Maria led them through hallways that seemed to stretch forever, finally arriving at a suite that was larger than Isabella's entire apartment. A bathroom attached, already running with hot water, towels laid out, a robe that would swallow Isabella whole. "There are clothes in the closet. They'll be large but dry," Maria said gently. "I'll find something for the little one." 15 minutes later, Isabella emerged wearing designer sweatpants and a cashmere sweater that felt like wearing clouds. Mia was wrapped in a child-sized robe, her hair towel-dried, her cheeks finally pink with warmth instead of cold. They returned to find Adrian hooked to an IV, oxygen tubing in his nose, looking impossibly small against white sheets. But his breathing had eased, his color better. Dr. Castellano monitored numbers on a machine with satisfied nods. Lorenzo stood vigil beside the bed, his focus absolute. The antibiotics are working already, the doctor reported. His oxygen saturation is improving. The fever is coming down. With continued treatment, he should be significantly better by morning. The tension in Lorenzo's shoulders eased fractionally. You'll stay tonight. Monitor him personally. Of course. Dr. Castellano glanced at Isabella. You've done well keeping him going this long, Mrs. Cruz. Many parents would have missed the warning signs. It's Miss, Isabella corrected automatically, and I pay attention. She's had to, Lorenzo said quietly, his eyes never leaving Adrian's face. Because I wasn't there. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Isabella had no response that wouldn't lead to questions she wasn't ready to answer. Not here, not now. Mia tugged on Isabella's hand. Mama, hungry. Maria appeared like magic. I've prepared soup and bread in the kitchen. If you'd like to bring the little one. Isabella looked at Adrian, then at Lorenzo. The man hadn't moved, his entire being focused on the child he'd learned existed only an hour ago. Go, he said without looking at her. Feed our daughter. I'll stay with our son. The possessiveness in those words, our daughter, our son, sent ice through Isabella's veins. This was exactly what she'd feared, exactly why she'd run. But what choice did she have now? She let Maria guide her and Mia to a kitchen that belonged in a restaurant, all professional-grade appliances and marble countertops. Soup waited in a ceramic tureen, bread warm from the oven. Mia climbed into a chair, eyes wide at the abundance. Fancy, the little girl whispered. Very fancy, Isabella agreed, ladling soup into a bowl. Her hand shook slightly as the adrenaline finally began to fade, leaving exhaustion and fear in its wake. Maria busied herself at the counter, giving them space but remaining present. A keeper, Isabella realized. Not a prison guard, but close enough. The estate was beautiful, comfortable, equipped with everything they could possibly need. It was also a gilded cage. Mia ate with the single-minded focus of a tired, hungry child. Isabella managed a few bites, her stomach too twisted with anxiety to handle more. Questions circled like vultures. How had Lorenzo found them? Had he been looking all this time, or was tonight pure chance? What did he want? What would he demand? What would he take? Miss Cruz, Maria's voice was gentle. I've prepared 2 rooms next to the medical suite. One for you, one for the children. They connect, so you can hear if they need you. We don't need 2 rooms. We can all stay together. Mr. Vieri was quite specific. The children will have their own space, appropriate for their needs. You'll be close enough to reach them in seconds. Translation. Lorenzo was already establishing territory, boundaries, control. Isabella's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Choose your battles, her mother used to say. Save your strength for the wars that matter. By the time Mia finished eating, the little girl could barely keep her eyes open. Isabella carried her back through the labyrinth of hallways, following Maria to the connected rooms. The children's room was a dream. 2 small beds with soft linens, a nightlight shaped like a moon, toys already arranged on shelves. Lorenzo had accomplished in an hour what Isabella had spent 3 years struggling to provide. She tucked Mia into one of the beds, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. Sleep, baby. Is Adrian going to be okay? Mia's voice was small, frightened. Yes, the doctor is making him better. Is that man really our papa? Isabella's throat closed. Yes. He seems nice, but big, and kind of scary. Mia yawned. But nice. He's complicated, Isabella managed. Sleep now. We'll talk tomorrow. Mia's eyes were already drifting shut. Isabella waited until her daughter's breathing evened into sleep before she allowed herself to move. The medical suite was quiet when she returned. Dr. Castellano dozed in a chair, monitors beeping softly. Adrian slept peacefully, his color healthy, breathing easy, and Lorenzo sat beside the bed, still in his rain-dampened suit, watching his son with an expression that made Isabella's chest ache. She'd expected anger, accusations, demands for answers. Instead, she found something far more dangerous, wonder. His name is Adrian, Isabella said quietly from the doorway. Lorenzo didn't turn. After your father. You remember. I remember everything about you, Isabella, including the night you disappeared from my bed without a word. Now he looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze could have melted steel. I searched for 6 months, every resource, every contact, every favor owed. You vanished like smoke. I had to. Why? The question was deceptively soft. Why run? Why hide my children from me? Because of what you are. What you do. Isabella stepped into the room, keeping her voice low. I couldn't raise children in your world, Lorenzo. I couldn't watch them grow up surrounded by violence and danger, and you thought struggling alone was better? Raising twins in poverty while working yourself to death? His voice hardened. Look at him, Isabella. Look at our son who almost died tonight because you were too proud or too frightened to tell me they existed. The accusation hit like a physical blow. I kept them alive. I kept them safe. We've been fine. Fine? Lorenzo stood, his full height and presence overwhelming. You call tonight fine? Racing through a storm to a pharmacy you can't afford while our son burns with fever? That's your definition of fine? It's better than growing up as mob royalty, constantly in danger, never knowing if their father will come home or end up dead in the street. That's not your decision to make alone anymore. Lorenzo's voice dropped to something lethal and certain. They're mine too. My blood, my responsibility. And I will give them everything: safety, security, education, opportunities you could never provide on a diner waitress's salary. Isabella's hands clenched into fists. I won't let you take them from me. I don't want to take them from you. Lorenzo moved closer, his presence suffocating. I want you all here, together, safe, protected. As what? Your prisoners? As my family. The word landed between them like a grenade. Family. The thing Isabella had built from nothing, now claimed by the man she'd spent 3 years hiding from. You don't have families, Lorenzo. You have assets, territories, possessions. People are just tools you use to maintain power. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or recognition. Is that what you think? That I'm incapable of caring for anything beyond my empire? I think you're a crime lord who rules through fear and violence. I think you're dangerous, and I think my children deserve better than to be raised in that darkness. Our children, he corrected coldly. And perhaps you're right. Perhaps I am all those things you say, but I'm also their father. And unlike you, I won't make them suffer because of pride or fear. They weren't suffering. Adrian was dying tonight. Dying, Isabella, because you were too stubborn to ask for help. Too determined to do everything alone. Lorenzo's voice cracked slightly. Do you know what that feels like? To discover you have children, and in the same breath, learn you almost lost one? The raw emotion in his words stole Isabella's breath. This wasn't the cold, calculating Lorenzo she remembered. This was a man confronting mortality through the lens of fatherhood, a role he'd been denied until tonight. I was protecting them, she whispered. From me. From their own father. Lorenzo turned back to Adrian, his jaw tight. And in doing so, you put them at greater risk than any enemy I have. Because you can't protect them alone, Isabella. You've proven that tonight. The truth of it burned. Isabella wanted to argue, to defend her choices, to justify 3 years of sacrifice and struggle. But looking at Adrian, healthy now because of Lorenzo's resources, his connections, his power, she couldn't deny the painful reality. She'd almost lost her son because she'd been too afraid to ask for help from the one person who could provide it. What happens now? She asked quietly. Lorenzo was silent for a long moment, his hand resting gently on Adrian's small shoulder. Now you stay here, you and the children, under my protection, in my home. For how long? As long as necessary. He looked at her then, and his eyes held absolute resolve. I've lost 3 years with my children, Isabella. I won't lose another day. And you won't run again. You can't keep me prisoner. I can keep you safe. There's a difference. Lorenzo's expression softened fractionally. I'm not your enemy, but I am their father, and I will do whatever necessary to ensure they have everything they need, including their mother. And if I refuse? If I try to leave? The silence stretched. Lorenzo's gaze held hers with the weight of empires behind it. "Then I'll stop you," he said simply. "Not with violence, not with threats, but with lawyers, resources, and every legal avenue available to a man of my means. I'll prove you're unfit, overwhelmed, unable to provide. I'll take custody, and you'll have visitation rights if you're lucky." Isabella's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't." "Test me." The words were soft, final. "I've built an empire from nothing, Isabella. I've survived wars, betrayals, and enemies who wanted me dead. Do you really think I'll let fear or pride separate me from my own children?" No, she didn't, because Lorenzo Vieri didn't lose what belonged to him. And whether Isabella liked it or not, the twins bound them together in a way that couldn't be severed. "I want my own room," she said finally, hating the defeat in her voice. "Privacy. Time alone with them without guards watching. Done. And I want to be part of decisions about their lives. Education, health, everything. Not just informed, included." Lorenzo studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Agreed. They need both parents. And no introducing them to your business. No exposure to violence or criminal activity. They stay innocent of that world as long as possible." "Also agreed. My work and my family will remain separate." The concessions came easier than Isabella expected, which meant Lorenzo had already thought this through, had already decided what he wanted and how to get it. He was negotiating from a position of absolute power, offering her just enough autonomy to feel like a participant rather than a prisoner. "What about your fiancé?" Isabella asked, remembering the society pages she'd glimpsed months ago. "Sofia Castellini, wasn't it? Daughter of the Castellini crime family. Your alliance marriage to unite the families." Lorenzo's expression hardened. "Ended. Tonight. Before I even left to find you." "Just like that? You ended an engagement that took months to negotiate?" "The moment I saw our children, every other priority ceased to exist." Lorenzo's voice was absolute. Sofia was a strategic alliance, nothing more. "She'll understand." "Will she?" Isabella laughed bitterly. "Or will she become another enemy we have to worry about?" "Let me worry about enemies. Your job is to take care of our children." Lorenzo moved toward the door, pausing beside her. "Get some rest, Isabella. Tomorrow we'll discuss the details. But tonight, just accept that everything has changed." He left before she could respond, his footsteps echoing down the hallway with the confident stride of a man who'd just reclaimed something stolen. Isabella stood in the quiet medical suite, watching Adrian sleep peacefully, and felt the foundations of her carefully built life crack beneath her feet. She'd spent 3 years running from Lorenzo Vieri. Now she was trapped in his home, bound by biology and circumstance to the most dangerous man she'd ever known. And the terrifying part? Some small traitorous part of her felt relief, because for 3 years she'd carried the weight alone. The fear, the responsibility, the constant struggle to keep them fed, clothed, safe. She'd been mother and father, provider and protector, stretched so thin she could barely breathe. Lorenzo's arrival had been a hurricane, devastating and transformative. But in the wreckage, she found something she hadn't expected. Help. The kind of help she'd been too proud or too frightened to ask for. The kind that came with a price she wasn't sure she could pay. Isabella sank into the chair Lorenzo had vacated, her eyes on Adrian's peaceful face. Her beautiful boy, so much like his father, it hurt. And Mia, sleeping in the next room, with Lorenzo's eyes and Isabella's stubborn spirit. They were the best parts of a night 3 years ago when passion had overwhelmed reason, when two people from different worlds had collided with the force of destiny. She'd run because she'd known even then that Lorenzo Vieri consumed everything he touched. Now she'd have to learn if she could survive being consumed without losing herself completely. The monitors beeped softly. Rain continued to fall outside, washing the city clean. And somewhere in this vast estate, Lorenzo Vieri plotted the future of the family he'd just discovered. Isabella closed her eyes and did what she'd done for 3 years. She prepared to fight for her children's future. Only this time, she wasn't fighting alone. She was fighting against the man who'd just become her greatest ally and most dangerous threat. And she had no idea which would destroy her first, his power or his protection. Isabella woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting luxury of Egyptian cotton sheets. For 3 blissful seconds, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back with the weight of a collapsing building. Lorenzo's estate, his protection, his control. She bolted upright, her heart hammering as she registered the elegant bedroom, cream walls, antique furniture, a view of manicured gardens that seemed impossible in Manhattan. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. She'd slept nearly 10 hours. The twins. Isabella threw off the covers and rushed to the connecting door, her bare feet silent on hardwood floors. She burst into the children's room expecting chaos or crisis, and instead found something that stopped her cold. Lorenzo sat on the floor between the 2 small beds, still wearing yesterday's suit pants and white dress shirt, now rumpled and missing its tie. Mia was curled against his side, giggling as he made a stuffed elephant. Where had that come from? Dance across his knee. Adrian sat propped against pillows in his bed, IV still attached but looking infinitely better, watching his father with solemn fascination. And then the elephant said, Lorenzo affected a ridiculous voice that seemed impossible from a crime lord, "I may be big, but you're the bravest little girl in all of New York." Mia dissolved into delighted laughter. "Do it again, Papa!" The word, Papa, hit Isabella like a fist to the sternum. One night. Lorenzo had been in their lives for one night, and Mia had already claimed him with the casual certainty of a child who'd found something she'd been missing. Lorenzo's gaze lifted, meeting Isabella's across the room. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, warning, challenge. Then he smiled at Mia, gentle and genuine. "Once more, Piccola. But then Papa needs to talk to your mama." He performed the elephant dance again, this time adding sound effects that made both twins laugh. Adrian's laugh dissolved into coughing, and Lorenzo's expression shifted instantly to concern. He was on his feet in a heartbeat, checking the boy's breathing, adjusting his pillows with the careful competence of someone who'd been watching, learning, memorizing. "Easy, Filio. Small breaths." Lorenzo's hand rested on Adrian's back, steady and warm. The coughing subsided. "Better. Good boy." Dr. Castellano appeared in the doorway, medical bag in hand, looking remarkably fresh for someone who'd been up all night. "Good morning, Miss Cruz. I was just coming to check on my patient. How is he?" Isabella moved to Adrian's other side, her hand automatically going to his forehead. Cooler. Significantly cooler. "Much improved," the doctor confirmed, pulling out his stethoscope. "The antibiotics are working beautifully. Another day or 2 of treatment and he should be completely recovered." Lorenzo stepped back, giving the doctor space but remaining close enough to monitor every movement. Isabella watched him watch their son, saw the tension in his shoulders, the hypervigilance of someone used to anticipating threats. He'd stayed all night. The realization struck her with uncomfortable force. Lorenzo Vieri, who commanded an empire and slept a few hours by reputation, had spent the entire night on the floor between his children's beds. "Mama!" Mia launched herself at Isabella, wrapping small arms around her legs. "Papa says we can have pancakes for breakfast, real pancakes with chocolate chips." "Does he?" Isabella's gaze shifted to Lorenzo, who had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "I may have promised certain things." He straightened his cuffs, a gesture so familiar it hurt. "Maria assures me this kitchen can accommodate requests." "The kitchen can accommodate anything Mr. Vieri requires, Maria said from the doorway, her tone warm with gentle humor. "Breakfast is ready whenever the family wishes to eat." Family. There was that word again, casually deployed like a grenade. Dr. Castellano finished his examination, making notes on a tablet. "Adrian's lungs are clearing nicely. I'd like to keep the IV in for another 12 hours, but he can eat solid foods if he's hungry. Keep him resting today, but by tomorrow he should be able to move around more freely." "Thank you, doctor." Lorenzo's tone carried dismissal and gratitude in equal measure. The doctor nodded and left, Maria trailing behind him. Silence fell over the room, broken only by Mia's humming as she danced the stuffed elephant across Isabella's legs. The morning light made everything seem softer, less dangerous than last night's rain-soaked confrontation. But danger didn't disappear with daylight. It just became harder to see. "We need to talk," Lorenzo said quietly. "Yes, Isabella scooped up Mia, using her daughter as both shield and anchor. We do. After breakfast, the children should eat first. Lorenzo moved to Adrian's bed, adjusting the blankets with unexpected tenderness. Can you walk or should I carry you? Adrian considered this with 3-year-old seriousness. Carry, but gentle. Always gentle with you, figlio. Lorenzo lifted the boy with practiced care, managing the IV line with surprising competence. Come, let's feed you both properly. The kitchen was warm and smelled like butter and vanilla. Maria had outdone herself. Pancakes, fresh fruit, bacon, orange juice, a spread that would have fed a family for a week back in Isabella's apartment. Mia attacked the food with enthusiasm, while Adrian picked at his plate with a sick child's cautious appetite. Lorenzo sat at the head of the long table, Isabella to his right, the twins between them. It was disturbingly domestic, this breakfast tableau. Like a real family, like something Isabella had never let herself imagine. So, Mia said around a mouthful of pancake, we live here now? Isabella's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. We're staying for a little while, baby. How long is a little while? Mia's eyes, Lorenzo's eyes, were far too perceptive. Is it like when we stayed at Aunt Rosa's? 1 week? Longer than that, Lorenzo answered before Isabella could. As long as you need to be safe and healthy. Forever? Mia's face lit up. Can we stay forever? This place is so big, and there's a garden. Can I play in the garden? Of course you can play in the garden. Lorenzo's smile was genuine, transformative. And there's a library. Do you like books? Mama reads to us every night. Then we'll have to find you good books. Lorenzo's gaze shifted to Isabella, challenge and curiosity mixing. What are they like? The question was simple. The implications weren't. He wanted to know them, wanted to fill in 3 years of absence with details and preferences and the 1,000 small things that made up a childhood. Mia likes adventure stories, Isabella said carefully. Brave girls who save the day. Adrian prefers animal books, especially elephants. Elephants are the best, Adrian offered quietly, his voice still raspy. They're big but nice, and they remember everything. Lorenzo's expression softened in a way Isabella had never seen. Like fathers, he said gently, we remember everything too. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Isabella felt it press against her chest, the accusation, the promise, the warning all wrapped in one. After breakfast, Maria appeared to take the twins to the library, promising books and toys and everything children could want. Mia went eagerly. Adrian hesitated until Lorenzo promised to check on him soon. Then it was just Isabella and Lorenzo in the suddenly cavernous kitchen. My office, Lorenzo said. We'll have privacy there. Isabella followed him through the mansion's elegant corridors, trying not to feel like a prisoner being led to sentencing. The office was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds. Power and wealth distilled into interior design. Lorenzo closed the door and moved to a bar cart, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. Whiskey? It's 10 in the morning. It's been a long night. He offered her the glass anyway. Liquid courage for difficult conversations. Isabella took it, if only to have something to hold. Lorenzo settled into the chair behind his massive desk, every inch the crime lord in his domain. But his eyes were tired, and yesterday's suit looked like he'd slept in it, because he had, on the floor, watching over children he'd just met. 3 years, Lorenzo began, his voice carefully neutral. 3 years you kept them from me. I need to understand why. Isabella took a sip of whiskey, letting the burn steady her nerves. I was pregnant when I left, 6 weeks. I didn't know until after. But once you did know, you chose not to tell me. Yes. Why? The question deserved honesty, even if the truth was ugly. Because I was terrified. Of you, of your world, of what raising children in that darkness would mean. You think I would have hurt them? No. I think you would have protected them so fiercely that they'd suffocate. I think you would have controlled every aspect of their lives in the name of safety. I think they would have grown up in a gilded cage surrounded by guards and danger and the constant knowledge that their father was a criminal. Lorenzo's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I wanted them to have normal lives, Isabella continued, to go to regular schools, make friends without background checks, play in parks without armed security. I wanted them to be children, not heirs to an empire built on blood. So instead you gave them poverty, struggle, a mother working herself to exhaustion just to keep them fed. Lorenzo's voice hardened. You almost let Adrian die because you were too proud to ask for help. I kept them alive, safe, loved. We had enough. Enough? Lorenzo stood abruptly, moving to the window with barely contained fury. You call barely scraping by enough? You call racing through a storm with a dying child to a pharmacy you can't afford enough? It was more than some people have, more than I had growing up. That's not the point. Lorenzo spun to face her, and for the first time Isabella saw real emotion crack through his control. The point is, they're mine, my blood, my responsibility, and you denied me the right to provide for them, to know them, to be their father. Because I didn't trust you to put them first, to choose them over your empire. And now? The question was quiet, dangerous. Do you trust me now? Isabella thought about Lorenzo on the floor between their beds. Lorenzo singing in Italian to calm Mia. Lorenzo checking Adrian's breathing with gentle hands that had ended lives. I don't know, she admitted. Last night you showed me a side of yourself I didn't know existed, but that doesn't erase what you are, what you do. What I am, Lorenzo said slowly, is a man who protects what's his. What I do is ensure that no one can threaten my family, my people, my empire. Those things haven't changed, Isabella, but I can separate them. My work and my children will exist in different worlds. Can you really? Or will they eventually collide? I'll make certain they don't. How? By hiding the truth from them forever? What happens when they're old enough to ask questions? When they Google their father's name and find articles about organized crime and federal investigations? Lorenzo was silent for a long moment. Then I'll tell them the truth, that I do difficult things in a difficult world, that I protect the people I care about by any means necessary, that I'm not a good man, but I'm trying to be a good father. The honesty surprised her. Isabella had expected denial, deflection, justification. Instead, she got truth, raw and uncomfortable. What do you want from us? She asked quietly. Really want? Lorenzo returned to his desk, sinking into the chair with the weight of someone who hadn't slept in too long. I want my children in my life. I want to know them, teach them, watch them grow. I want to give them everything I never had, safety, education, opportunity. And me? His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. You're their mother. They need you, so you stay too. As what? Your employee? Your prisoner? As their mother, Lorenzo interrupted. As someone under my protection. Beyond that. He paused, choosing words carefully. Beyond that depends on what you want. The implication hung between them like smoke. Once there had been chemistry between them, explosive, consuming, the kind that had led to 6 weeks of passion before reality intruded. Isabella had run before that chemistry could become something more dangerous. Now they had children binding them together, making the past impossible to escape. I want my freedom, Isabella said finally. I want to make decisions about my own life. I want the twins to have normal experiences, not just luxury and isolation. And I want your word that you won't use your power to control us. Define control. Don't manipulate situations to get your way. Don't use money or lawyers or threats to override my decisions. Don't teach them that power equals righteousness. Lorenzo considered this, fingers steepled beneath his chin. I can't promise to never use my resources to protect them. But I can promise to consult you first on major decisions, to listen to your perspective, to try to find balance between safety and normalcy. And if we disagree, then we'll fight about it like any parents do, with words, not weapons. A slight smile touched his mouth, though I suspect you're formidable with both. Despite everything, Isabella felt her own mouth twitch. You have no idea. Then educate me. Lorenzo leaned forward, suddenly intense. Tell me about them. Everything I've missed. First words, first steps, favorite foods, fears, dreams, all of it. The request was so genuine, so hungry, that Isabella felt something in her chest crack. This was a man confronting the magnitude of his loss. 3 years of moments he could never reclaim, milestones he'd never witnessed. So she told him. She told him about Adrian's first word, more, and how he'd said it constantly for months, about Mia's first steps, taken while reaching for a butterfly in the park, about bedtime rituals and favorite songs, and the way Adrian hummed when he was happy, while Mia talked nonstop when she was nervous. She told him about close calls and small victories, about the time Adrian ran a fever for 3 days and Isabella had nearly broken down from fear, about Mia's fiercely protective streak, how she'd punched a boy who pushed Adrian off a swing. Lorenzo listened with absolute focus, absorbing every detail like a man memorizing sacred text. Sometimes his expression tightened with pain at what he'd missed. Sometimes he smiled at their antics. Always, he remained completely present. "They're extraordinary," he said when Isabella finally paused. "Like their mother." The compliment caught her off guard. "They're themselves. I just try to keep up." "You've done more than keep up. You've raised them alone with nothing and made them happy and healthy and loved." Lorenzo's voice softened. "I'm angry you kept them from me, Isabella. Furious even. But I'm also grateful. Because despite everything, despite the poverty and struggle, you gave them what I probably couldn't have. A childhood." The admission cost him. Isabella saw it in the tightness around his eyes, the careful control of his expression. "What happened with Sophia?" she asked, changing the subject before the moment became too raw. "Your fiancé. You said you ended it." "I did. Last night, while you were getting dry clothes." Lorenzo's tone went flat, businesslike. "I called her, explained that circumstances had changed, and offered her a settlement for the inconvenience. Just like that? Months of negotiation between your families, an alliance that strengthened your position, you just threw it away? It wasn't a marriage. It was a business arrangement, and my priorities shifted. She'll be angry, humiliated. The Castellini family won't just accept. Let me worry about the Castellinis." Lorenzo's voice went hard. "They'll understand that some things supersede politics. My children are one of those things." "You're sure? Because the last thing we need is a crime family vendetta because you jilted their daughter." "Sophia isn't their daughter. She's their niece. And she was as enthusiastic about our marriage as I was." Lorenzo waved a dismissive hand. "She'll be relieved, actually. She had a lover she wanted to marry anyway. I've already arranged for them to receive my blessing and financial support." "That's surprisingly generous." "I'm not a monster, Isabella. I don't punish people for wanting love instead of duty." His eyes held hers. "I understand that impulse better than you know." The words carried weight, meaning, memory. Isabella remembered the 6 weeks they'd spent together, the intensity, the connection, the terrifying certainty that what they had was more than just chemistry. That's why she'd run. Not just from his danger, but from the way he'd made her feel. Like she was falling. Like she might never stop. A knock interrupted the moment. Maria appeared in the doorway, looking apologetic. "Mr. Vieri, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have visitors. They're quite insistent." Lorenzo's expression hardened. "Who?" "Your brothers, Marco and Dante. They say it's urgent." Isabella's stomach dropped. Brothers meant family. Family meant witnesses to this complicated situation. More people to navigate, to explain, to manage. "Send them to the sitting room. I'll be there shortly." Lorenzo waited until Maria left before turning to Isabella. "My brothers. They're protective. They'll have questions. About me? About the twins? About everything." Lorenzo stood, buttoning his shirt cuffs with sharp precision. "They're good men, Isabella. Loyal, but they're also suspicious by nature and training. Let me handle this." "They're going to hate me. They're going to be shocked. Then they'll be angry I kept this from them. Then they'll fall in love with their nephew and niece and probably spoil them relentlessly." Lorenzo moved toward the door, then paused. "Stay here. I'll talk to them first, then introduce you properly." "Lorenzo, please." The single word held volumes. "Let me handle my family my way. Then you can handle yours." He left before Isabella could ask what he meant by that. She sank into the chair he'd vacated, her mind spinning with implications. Lorenzo had brothers. The twins had uncles they'd never met. This web of family connections was expanding exponentially, pulling them deeper into a world she'd tried so hard to escape. Voices drifted down the hallway, male, loud, upset. Isabella moved to the door, not quite opening it, but listening shamelessly. Can't just end a marriage alliance without consulting us first. That was a new voice, younger than Lorenzo's. The Castellinis are furious. Sophia's father is making noise about disrespect and... Sophia's father can make whatever noise he wants, Lorenzo cut in coldly. I've already offered appropriate compensation. The matter is settled. Nothing is settled. Another voice, older, harder. You've jeopardized our entire Eastern alliance over what? Some woman? Who is she? Watch your tone when you speak about her. Lorenzo's voice dropped to something lethal. And she's not some woman. She's the mother of my children. Stunned silence. You're... what? The younger voice sounded strangled. My children. Twins. A boy and a girl. 3 years old. That's impossible. You would have told us. You would have... The older voice stopped abruptly. Unless you didn't know. I didn't know until last night. Cristo. Someone, Isabella couldn't tell which, swore viciously. How? Why? Who is this woman and why are we just hearing about this now? Lorenzo's response was too quiet for Isabella to hear clearly, but she caught words. Hidden, protected, his fault, changes everything. The conversation continued, growing heated and then quieting as Lorenzo presumably explained the situation. Isabella paced the office, anxiety building with each passing minute. This was it, the moment where Lorenzo's two worlds collided. Would he choose his empire, his family's approval, or would he stand by his decision to claim the twins regardless of political consequences? 30 minutes passed before Lorenzo returned, his expression carefully neutral. They want to meet you. And the children. Now? Now. He extended his hand, a gesture that was half invitation, half command. Come, let's introduce you to the Vieri family. Isabella took his hand because refusing seemed both futile and foolish. His grip was warm, steady, grounding. Together they walked down the hallway to a sitting room where two men waited with barely contained tension. They looked like Lorenzo. Same dark hair, same sharp features, same dangerous elegance. But where Lorenzo carried controlled power, these two radiated barely leashed aggression. The younger one paced like a caged predator. The older one stood with military precision, watching the doorway with cold assessment, both sets of eyes locked onto Isabella with laser intensity. Isabella Cruz, Lorenzo said formally. These are my brothers. Marco, he indicated the older one, and Dante, the younger. Gentlemen, this is Isabella. And before you say anything, remember that she's under my protection. Treat her accordingly. Marco's expression remained carefully blank. Dante looked like he wanted to punch something. Where are they? Dante demanded. The twins. Where? The library with Maria, Lorenzo replied calmly. And they're recovering. Adrian was very sick last night. They need rest, not overwhelm. But Dante was already moving toward the door. Marco caught his arm, his voice low and commanding. Wait, let Lorenzo finish. Dante stopped, but his entire body vibrated with contained energy. I have a nephew and a niece I've never met. A nephew who was sick, who we didn't know existed to protect. And you want me to wait? I want you to think, Marco said sharply. This situation is complicated enough without you charging in like a bull. Complicated? Dante spun on Lorenzo. You had 3 years. 3 years and you never told us you were looking for a woman, that you'd gotten someone pregnant, that somewhere out there. I didn't know, Lorenzo repeated, harder this time. She left without telling me. I searched for months and found nothing. The twins were born in secret, raised in secret, kept from me deliberately. Both brothers' attention shifted to Isabella with renewed intensity. You hid his children from him, Marco said quietly, dangerously. You ran, stayed hidden, and kept him from his own blood. Why? Isabella lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. Because I was protecting them. From your world. From the violence and danger that comes with the Vieri name. You thought you could protect them better alone? Dante's voice dripped disbelief. You thought poverty and struggle was preferable to— I thought freedom was preferable to a gilded cage, Isabella shot back. I thought growing up normal was better than growing up surrounded by bodyguards and blood money. And before you judge me, ask yourselves what you would have done if someone you barely knew showed up pregnant with twins, asking to raise them in the middle of a crime empire. I would have protected them, Marco said flatly, with everything I had, and in the process, imprisoned them, controlled them, made them targets. Isabella held his gaze. I made the choice I thought was right at the time. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe I should have told Lorenzo, but I'm not going to apologize for putting my children's well-being first. Dante looked at Lorenzo. She's got fire, I'll give her that. She's got our nephew and niece, Marco corrected, which makes her family, whether we like it or not. He turned to Isabella, his expression softening fractionally. I don't agree with your choices, but I understand fear, and I understand a mother's need to protect her children. So for now, we'll put aside judgment and focus on what matters, those kids. I want to meet them, Dante said immediately. In a bit, Lorenzo replied. Let them finish their quiet time first. Adrian especially needs to rest. What's wrong with him? You said he was sick. How sick? Does he need specialists? I know a pediatrician and he's recovering from pneumonia. Dr. Castellano is managing his care. He'll be fine in a few days. Dante relaxed visibly. Good. That's good. The room fell into awkward silence. Isabella felt the weight of assessment from both brothers, saw them cataloging details, making judgments, calculating angles. This was how the Vieri family operated, constant evaluation of threats and opportunities. She was both. So what now? Marco asked finally. You've upended our political alliances, revealed a secret family, and brought a civilian into the heart of our organization. What's the plan, Lorenzo? The plan is simple, Lorenzo replied. Isabella and the twins stay here, under my protection. We establish paternity legally. The children are recognized as my heirs, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. The other families will see this as weakness, Marco warned. A crime lord so consumed with sentiment that he abandons strategic alliances for— They can see it however they want, Lorenzo interrupted, his voice like steel. My children are not up for discussion, debate, or negotiation. They exist. They're mine. And I will do whatever necessary to secure their future. If that makes me weak, so be it. The brothers exchanged glances loaded with meaning. Some silent communication passed between them, years of brotherhood condensed into a look. Then we protect them, Marco said finally. All of them. The twins, Isabella, they're family now, which means they're ours to defend. And spoil, Dante added with the first genuine smile Isabella had seen. I've been an uncle for exactly 40 minutes, and I've already mentally spent a fortune on toys. Despite everything, Isabella felt her lips twitch. They don't need things. They need stability, normalcy, love. They'll have all of that, Lorenzo assured her, plus some things. Because they're Vieri children now, and we take care of our own. The possessiveness in those words should have frightened her. Instead, Isabella felt something unexpected. Security. For 3 years, she'd been alone. One woman against the world, fighting to keep her children safe and fed and happy. Now, suddenly, she had allies. Dangerous, complicated, criminal allies, but allies nonetheless. Can we meet them now? Dante asked, practically bouncing with barely contained energy. Please. I promise to be calm and gentle and not overwhelming. Lorenzo checked his watch. Fine, but quietly. And if Adrian is sleeping, you wait. They found the twins in the library, exactly where Maria had left them. Adrian was curled on a velvet sofa, sleeping peacefully with an elephant book clutched to his chest. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by picture books, talking to herself in the intense way of imaginative children. She looked up when they entered, and her eyes went wide. More papas? Dante made a strangled sound. Marco's carefully controlled expression cracked into something almost soft. Not papas, Piccola, Lorenzo said gently, crouching beside her. These are your uncles, your papa's brothers, Uncle Marco and Uncle Dante. I have uncles. Mia looked delighted. Like in the princess books? The ones who bring presents and tell stories? Exactly like that, Dante said, his voice rough with unexpected emotion. He knelt on the floor, making himself smaller, less threatening. Hi, Mia. I'm Dante. And yes, I'll bring you presents. Lots of presents. And stories? All the stories you want. Mia studied him with serious consideration, then apparently decided he passed inspection. She launched herself at him with the casual trust of a child who'd been loved enough to assume everyone was safe. Dante caught her, his large hands gentle as he held his niece for the first time. His eyes closed briefly, and Isabella saw his throat work around emotion. Marco moved to the sofa where Adrian slept, his expression unreadable as he studied the boy. He looks like Lorenzo did at that age. Same stubborn chin. Same need for sleep, Lorenzo agreed quietly. He was very sick last night. But he's better now? Marco's voice carried protective edge. Getting better. The doctor says he'll be fully recovered soon. Mia was chattering to Dante about books and elephants and the garden she wanted to explore. Dante listened with absolute attention, asking questions, genuinely engaged in her 3-year-old logic. They're perfect, he said, looking up at Lorenzo with something like awe. How did you make perfect humans? I had help, Lorenzo replied, his gaze finding Isabella across the room. The moment stretched, loaded with unspoken complexity. Isabella saw the brothers register it, saw them catalog this new dynamic in the Vieri family structure. Adrian stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He saw the new faces and immediately looked for Isabella. Mama? Right here, baby. She moved to the sofa, running gentle fingers through his hair. These are your uncles, Papa's brothers. They came to meet you. Adrian studied Marco with the solemn wariness of a sick child confronting strangers. You're big like Papa. We're all big in this family, Marco said, his voice surprisingly gentle. But we're gentle with the people we love. And we already love you, Adrian. You don't know me, Adrian pointed out with 3-year-old logic. Doesn't matter. You're our nephew. That means we love you automatically. It's a rule. Adrian considered this, then apparently decided it made sense. Okay, but I'm tired. Then rest, Marco said simply. We'll be here when you wake up. Uncle Dante and I aren't going anywhere. And just like that, the Vieri family expanded. 2 uncles who'd known about their nephew and niece for less than an hour were already integrated into the twins' world with the smooth efficiency of people used to adapting to rapidly changing circumstances. Isabella watched it happen, watched her carefully protected children being absorbed into a family she'd tried so hard to keep them from, and felt control slipping through her fingers like sand. But underneath the fear, something else stirred, relief. Because for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't carrying the weight alone. The weight had gotten heavier, more complicated, more dangerous. But at least now, there were others to help carry it, even if those others were the exact people she'd spent 3 years running from. 3 weeks passed in a blur of adjustments and revelations that left Isabella feeling like she was living someone else's life. The twins flourished under the estate's luxuries. Adrian's health returned completely, his energy boundless as he explored gardens that seemed endless to a 3-year-old. Mia had claimed the library as her kingdom, demanding story time from whichever uncle happened to be available. And there were always uncles available. Marco visited daily, his stern exterior melting completely around the twins. He taught Adrian chess basics with miniature pieces, patient even when the boy used the knights as imaginary horses. Dante appeared with presents so frequently that Isabella had to establish a rule. 1 gift per week, maximum. He'd pouted like a child himself, but complied, channeling his generosity into elaborate storytelling instead. Lorenzo remained the constant. He rearranged his entire schedule around the twins' routines, present for breakfast and dinner without fail. He read bedtime stories in Italian, teaching them words they'd never need but absorbed anyway. He was attentive, engaged, genuinely devoted in ways that terrified Isabella, because they made it harder to see him as just a threat. But beneath the domestic tranquility, tension simmered. Isabella felt it in the guards who materialized whenever she took the twins to the garden, in the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms, in Lorenzo's increasingly long phone calls behind closed doors, his voice sharp with command she wasn't supposed to hear. Something was building. And on a gray Tuesday morning, it finally erupted. Isabella was having coffee in the solarium when Marco found her, his expression grim. "We need to talk. Lorenzo's office. Now." Her stomach dropped. "The twins are fine. Maria has them in the playroom. This is about something else." Marco's tone left no room for argument. Lorenzo's office was already occupied when they arrived. Dante leaned against the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Lorenzo sat behind his desk, expression carved from granite. On the desk between them lay photographs, grainy surveillance images that made Isabella's blood run cold. Her apartment building, the diner where she'd worked, the pharmacy from that rainy night. And in each photo, circled in red marker, was Isabella herself. "Someone's been watching you," Lorenzo said without preamble. "For at least 2 months before I found you, possibly longer." Isabella's knees went weak. She gripped the chair back for support. "Who? Why?" "That's what we're trying to determine." Marco moved to the desk, spreading more photos. These were discovered during a routine sweep of Castellini surveillance equipment. Someone in their organization was tracking you. "The Castellinis?" Isabella's voice cracked. "Your ex-fiancé's family? They were watching me before you even knew about the twins?" "It appears so." Lorenzo's voice was dangerously calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "Which means either they knew about the children before I did, or they were watching you for an entirely different reason." "What other reason would they have?" Dante pushed off from the window, pacing like a caged animal. "She's a civilian, a waitress. She has no connection to our world except through Lorenzo." "Unless they suspected that connection," Marco said grimly. Lorenzo searched for Isabella for months 3 years ago. He wasn't subtle about it. If the Castellinis were paying attention, and they always are, they might have flagged her as someone of interest. Isabella sank into the chair, her mind racing. "You're saying they've known about me this whole time? That they were just waiting?" "Or gathering intelligence," Lorenzo replied. "The Castellini family doesn't make moves without extensive planning. If they identified you as my former lover, they would have monitored you, and when the twins appeared..." He trailed off, the implications hanging heavy. "They would have known they were yours," Isabella finished, horror blooming in her chest. "Before you did. They knew, and they didn't tell you. Which means they were saving that information for leverage." Marco's expression was murderous. "The question is whether they still plan to use it." "Of course they plan to use it," Dante snapped. Lorenzo humiliated Sofia by ending their engagement. The family lost a crucial alliance. They're not going to just let that slide. Lorenzo's hands flattened on the desk, the only visible sign of his fury. "The surveillance stopped the night I found Isabella. As soon as I brought her here, the watchers disappeared." "Because they no longer needed to watch," Marco concluded. "You'd revealed your hand, brought her into your home, acknowledged the children publicly within the family. Everything they'd been waiting to confirm, you confirmed." Isabella's throat closed around panic. "So what does that mean? What are they going to do?" "That depends on what they want," Lorenzo said carefully, his eyes meeting hers. "If they simply want compensation for the broken alliance, we can negotiate. Money, territory, business concessions, all manageable." "And if they want more?" Isabella whispered. The silence was answer enough. Dante broke it first, his voice rough. "They could demand the children. Claim that Lorenzo's heirs should be raised with appropriate protection and education, meaning under Castellini influence. Position it as concern for their safety." "Over my dead body," Lorenzo said flatly. "That might be exactly what they're counting on," Marco replied. "Push you into a position where you have to choose between peace and family. See which one breaks first." "I've already made that choice. Family wins. Every time." Lorenzo stood, moving to the window with controlled precision. "The question is how to neutralize the threat before it becomes active." "You could meet with them," Isabella offered quietly. "Talk to Sofia directly. Woman to woman, maybe she'll..." "Sofia doesn't control the family," Marco interrupted. "Her father does. And Dominic Castellini doesn't forgive perceived slights. Lorenzo broke a deal, cost them prestige and position. He'll want blood or something equally valuable." "Then we give him something valuable," Lorenzo said. "Information, access, whatever he wants that doesn't involve my children or their mother." And if that's not enough? Dante challenged. Lorenzo turned from the window, and the expression on his face made Isabella's breath catch. This was the crime lord, the man who'd built an empire through ruthlessness and strategic brutality. This was the side of him she'd run from. Then we remind the Castellinis why the Vieri name commands respect, he said softly, and we make it very clear that my family is not negotiable. A knock interrupted the tension. Maria appeared in the doorway, her normally composed expression strained. Mr. Vieri, you have a visitor, Dominic Castellini. He's in the main foyer and refuses to leave until he speaks with you. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. How many men? Marco asked immediately, his hand moving unconsciously toward his jacket where Isabella knew he kept a weapon. 4, plus Mr. Castellini himself. Maria's gaze flicked to Isabella. He asked specifically that Miss Cruz be present for the conversation. Isabella's stomach lurched. Me? Why would he want me there? Because this isn't just business, Lorenzo said grimly. This is personal. He wants me to know he can reach you, that he knows exactly how to hurt me. He turned to Marco and Dante. Get the twins to the secure room, full lockdown protocol. No one in or out except family. Lorenzo, Isabella started. No arguments. The twins' safety is non-negotiable. His gaze softened fractionally. I need to know they're protected so I can focus on handling Dominic. Can you give me that? She wanted to argue, to demand answers, to refuse to be sidelined while men negotiated her fate. But maternal instinct overrode pride. Okay, but I want updates. Every step of whatever happens. You'll have them. Lorenzo moved to her, his hand cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. Trust me to handle this. Please. Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice. Lorenzo's thumb brushed her cheek once, a gesture so intimate it stole her breath. Then he was striding toward the door with Marco flanking him. Dante stayed behind, his expression sympathetic. Come on, let's get you to the twins. They'll want to see you, and you'll want to see them safe. The secure room turned out to be a reinforced suite in the estate's center. No windows, reinforced walls, enough supplies to survive a siege. Mia and Adrian were already there with Maria, playing with blocks and blissfully unaware of the danger circling outside. Mama! Mia launched herself forward. Uncle Dante says we're having an adventure, like in the princess books. That's right, Piccola, Dante confirmed, his voice steady despite the tension radiating from his frame. We're going to stay here for a little while, just us. Make it a special fort. Adrian looked up from his blocks, his brown eyes, so like Lorenzo's, seeing more than a 3-year-old should. Is Papa fighting? The question pierced Isabella's heart. Papa is having an important talk with some people. He'll come see you when he's done. Will he be okay? The worry in Adrian's small voice destroyed her. Your papa is very strong, Dante said, crouching beside the boy. And very smart. He'll be fine, I promise. Isabella prayed that promise wasn't a lie. 20 minutes dragged by. Then 40. An hour. Dante paced the room like a caged tiger, checking his phone compulsively for updates that didn't come. Maria kept the twins entertained with stories and snacks, her calm presence a counterpoint to the adults' anxiety. Finally, Dante's phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression darkening before he carefully schooled it neutral. Lorenzo wants to see you. Now. Isabella's heart hammered. What happened? Is he... He's fine, but he needs you for the next part. Dante's gaze held hers, serious and steady. Whatever Dominic said, whatever Lorenzo asks you to do, remember that he's thinking 10 steps ahead. Trust him. Not exactly reassuring, but Isabella nodded anyway. She kissed both twins, promised them she'd be back soon, and followed Dante through hallways that felt more oppressive with each step. They found Lorenzo in the formal sitting room, standing by the fireplace with rigid control. Marco stood near the door, his expression murderous. And seated in the center of the room, perfectly at ease in enemy territory, was a man who radiated old-world power. Dominic Castellini was in his 60s, silver-haired and elegant in a navy suit that probably cost more than a car. His eyes were sharp, calculating, the kind that missed nothing. He smiled when Isabella entered, and it was the smile of a snake sizing up prey. Ah, Miss Cruz, how lovely to finally meet you properly. I've heard so much about you. His accent carried a trace of Sicily beneath cultivated American smoothness. I wish I could say the same, Isabella replied, proud that her voice didn't shake. Please sit. Dominic gestured to the chair across from him. We have much to discuss. Isabella looked at Lorenzo, who gave a barely perceptible nod. She sat, spine straight, hands folded to hide their trembling. You have a beautiful home here, Dominic continued, his tone conversational. And such beautiful children, Mia and Adrian, yes? Wonderful names. They're the very image of their father. The threat was implicit. He'd been watching, knew their names, had probably seen them through his surveillance. Get to the point, Dominic, Lorenzo said coldly. You didn't come here to make small talk. No, I didn't. Dominic's smile vanished, replaced by business-like efficiency. I came to discuss the mess you've created, Lorenzo. You broke an engagement that took months to negotiate. You humiliated my niece publicly. You cost both our families an alliance that would have strengthened our position against the Russians and the Irish. I offered substantial compensation. Money isn't the issue, Dominic interrupted. Respect is. You made the Castellini family look weak, like we couldn't even hold together a simple marriage alliance. That perception has consequences. What do you want? Lorenzo's voice was dangerously quiet. I want balance restored. Dominic leaned back, completely relaxed. I want the other families to see that the Castellinis are still powerful, still worthy of respect and fear, and I want you to help me achieve that. How? A gesture, public, unmistakable, proving that the Vieri and Castellini families remain allied despite the broken engagement. Dominic's gaze shifted to Isabella. I want you to marry Miss Cruz. The room went silent. Isabella's heart stopped. Excuse me? Lorenzo's voice was ice. Marry her. Publicly, with all the ceremony and celebration such a union deserves. Legitimize your children in the eyes of our world. And in doing so, send a message that the Vieri family values commitment, family, honor. All the things I can use to rebuild our damaged reputation. You want me to marry Isabella to salvage your pride? Lorenzo's laugh was sharp, bitter. That's your demand? It's not just pride, Dominic countered. It's strategy. Right now, you look like a man who abandoned duty for passion. A weakness our enemies will exploit. But if you marry the mother of your children, legitimize your heirs, and throw a celebration that shows the Castellini family standing with you, well, that changes the narrative entirely. Isabella found her voice finally. You want to use our marriage as a PR stunt for your family's reputation? I want to turn a scandal into a strength, Dominic corrected. Lorenzo loves you. Anyone with eyes can see that. He loves those children. Why not make it official? Why not give them your name, your protection, your public commitment? And in the process, you help me save face with the other families. Everyone wins. Except we're being forced into it, Isabella shot back. That's not a marriage. That's coercion. Is it? Dominic's eyes glittered. Or is it simply accelerating something that would happen anyway? Do you really think Lorenzo would let you raise his children without eventually demanding marriage? Do you think he'd allow his heirs to remain bastards indefinitely? The word hit like a slap. Bastards. That's what Mia and Adrian would be called in this world. Illegitimate children of a crime lord and his former mistress. Watch your mouth, Lorenzo growled. I'm stating facts, Dominic replied calmly. Facts you've been avoiding because the situation is complicated. But I'm offering you a solution. Marry Isabella. Legitimize the twins. Throw a celebration that shows unity between our families. And I'll use my influence to ensure that your children are recognized, respected, and protected by every family in our organization. And if I refuse? Dominic's expression hardened. Then I'll make it known that Lorenzo Vieri's bastard children are not recognized by the Castellini family. That they have no standing, no protection, no legitimacy, and when other families inevitably target them to get to you, because they will, Lorenzo, you know they will, the Castellinis will not lift a finger to help. The threat hung in the air, crystal clear. Marry Isabella and gain protection for the twins, or refuse and watch them become targets in a world that devoured weakness. You son of a... Marco started forward, but Lorenzo raised a hand, stopping him. Let me be very clear, Lorenzo said, his voice deadly calm. If you or anyone else threatens my children, I will burn your entire family to the ground. I will erase the Castellini name from history, and I will do it slowly enough that you have time to regret every word you've spoken here today. Empty threats from a man in a weak position, Dominic countered. You can't protect them alone, Lorenzo. You need allies, and I'm offering to be one. For a price. Marriage isn't a price. It's a commitment. A choice. Lorenzo's gaze found Isabella's across the room. And it's not mine alone to make. The weight of that statement settled over her like a shroud. This was it, the moment where she had to choose, refuse, and leave her children vulnerable to a criminal underworld that saw them as leverage. Agree, and bind herself permanently to a man she'd spent 3 years running from. Neither option was freedom. Both were cages of different designs. Can we have a moment? Isabella asked, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Lorenzo and I need to discuss this privately. Dominic smiled, triumph already lighting his eyes. Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. Lorenzo gestured to Marco and Dante, who reluctantly filed out with Dominic between them. The moment the door closed, Isabella stood on shaking legs. You can't seriously be considering this, she said. I'm considering every angle. Lorenzo moved to the bar, pouring 2 whiskeys with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. And what I see is a man who will absolutely make good on his threats if we refuse. So we give in, let him dictate our lives because he's angry his niece got jilted? We make a strategic decision that protects our children. Lorenzo handed her the glass. That's what parents do, Isabella. We make hard choices. Marriage isn't a hard choice, it's a permanent one. Isabella took a long drink, letting the burn steady her. You really think we could make it work? A relationship built on blackmail and political necessity? I think we already have something, Lorenzo said quietly. We had it 3 years ago, before you ran. We have it now, in the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. In the way I can't stop thinking about you, even when I should be focused on business. Isabella's breath caught. That's not love, that's chemistry, attraction. It's not enough to build a marriage on. Then what is enough? Lorenzo moved closer, his presence overwhelming. Respect? We have that. Common goals? We're both willing to do anything for those kids. Trust? That's growing. And passion? We definitely have passion. We also have completely different values. You're a crime lord, Lorenzo. I'm a waitress who wants her kids to have normal lives. How do we reconcile that? The same way any couple does. We compromise. We find middle ground. We choose each other, every day, even when it's hard. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. I'm not asking you to love me, Isabella. Not yet. I'm asking you to marry me so our children are protected. Everything else we'll figure out as we go. And if we can't figure it out, if we end up hating each other, then at least the twins will be safe, legitimate, protected by both our families. Lorenzo's eyes held hers, raw and honest. I won't lie and say this is what I wanted. I would have preferred to court you properly, earn your trust, maybe one day deserve your love. But we don't have that luxury. Dominic has forced our hand. He's forcing a lot more than our hand, Isabella whispered. I know, and I hate it. But I also know that refusing him puts targets on our children's backs. And I won't risk them, Isabella. I can't. Neither could she. That was the terrible truth. Isabella would walk through fire for Mia and Adrian, would sacrifice anything, including her own freedom, even if it meant marrying a man she wasn't sure she could trust. If I agree, she said slowly, I have conditions. Name them. We sleep in separate rooms. This marriage is for the twins' protection, not a real relationship. Not unless we both decide otherwise. Lorenzo nodded, though something flickered in his eyes. Agreed, but the twins' upbringing remains a shared decision. You don't override me on education, health, or values just because you're their father. Done. And you keep your business separate from our family life. No criminal activity around the children, no violence, no danger. They stay innocent as long as possible. I've already promised you that. I keep my promises, Isabella. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. Despite everything, despite his profession and his power, she believed Lorenzo Vieri would keep his word. Okay, she breathed. I'll marry you. For the twins. Something blazed in Lorenzo's expression. Triumph, relief, hunger, all mixed together. For the twins, he agreed. Everything else comes second. He pulled her into his arms, then, holding her with surprising gentleness. Isabella let herself lean into his strength for just a moment, absorbing the warmth and solidity of him. This was happening. She was marrying Lorenzo Vieri, binding herself to the most dangerous man she'd ever known. For her children. Always for her children. "We should tell Dominic," she murmured against his chest. "In a minute." Lorenzo's arms tightened fractionally. "Let me have this moment. Just us. Before the circus begins." Isabella understood. Once they opened that door, everything would accelerate beyond their control. Plans would be made, announcements crafted, a wedding orchestrated to serve political purposes rather than personal joy. But for now, in this quiet room, they were just two people who'd created something extraordinary together and were trying desperately not to destroy it. When they finally emerged, Dominic was waiting in the foyer with Marco and Dante hovering like barely restrained attack dogs. He took one look at their faces and smiled. "I take it we have an understanding." "We'll marry," Lorenzo confirmed. "But on my timeline, in my way. The celebration will be lavish enough to satisfy your need for public perception, but the details are mine to control." "Fair enough. As long as the other families see unity and strength, I'm flexible on specifics." Dominic extended his hand. "Congratulations, Lorenzo. You're doing the right thing for everyone involved." Lorenzo shook the offered hand with visible reluctance. "Don't mistake necessity for friendship, Dominic. You've leveraged my children to get what you want. I won't forget that." "I don't expect you to." Dominic's smile was sharp. "But I do expect you to honor your word. A wedding within the month. Public. Celebrated. Or our understanding becomes very different." "You'll have your wedding." Lorenzo's voice promised violence beneath the agreement. "Now get out of my house." Dominic left with his guards, and the moment the door closed behind him, Dante exploded. "That manipulative... We should have thrown him out the second he made demands." "And then what?" Marco challenged. "Fight a war with the Castellinis while protecting two 3-year-olds? You really think that ends well?" "It ends with Isabella having a choice instead of being forced into..." "I made my choice," Isabella interrupted quietly. "For better or worse, I chose this. Because the alternative was worse." Both brothers fell silent, their expressions varying shades of sympathy and anger. "We'll make it work," Marco said finally. "The family will close ranks. Anyone who wants to hurt those kids will have to go through all of us." "And we're vicious when we protect our own," Dante added. "Welcome to the family, Isabella. For real this time." The acceptance in their voices was genuine, even if the circumstances were terrible. Isabella nodded her thanks, then turned to Lorenzo. "I need to see the twins. I need to hold them and remember why I just agreed to this." "I'll take you." Lorenzo's hand found the small of her back, a gesture both possessive and comforting. "They've probably been asking for you constantly." They found Mia and Adrian exactly where they'd left them, now building an elaborate block castle with Maria's patient assistance. Both children lit up when their parents entered. "Mama! Papa!" Mia abandoned the blocks to launch herself at them. "Did you finish your important talk?" "We did, Piccola." Lorenzo caught her, lifting her high enough to make her giggle. "And we have news for you and your brother." Adrian looked up from his blocks, curious. "What news?" Lorenzo glanced at Isabella, a question in his eyes. She nodded. Together, they'd tell their children that everything was about to change. "Your mama and I are getting married," Lorenzo said gently. "Which means we'll all be a family. Officially." Mia's face scrunched in confusion. "Aren't we already a family?" "We are," Isabella confirmed. "But this makes it special, legal. It means your papa and I will be married, like in the princess stories. Will you wear a pretty dress?" Mia's priorities were clear. "Probably." "And papa will wear a fancy suit?" "Definitely," Lorenzo confirmed, smiling despite the tension still evident in his shoulders. "And there'll be cake?" Adrian wanted to know. "So much cake," Dante promised from the doorway. The twins accepted this with the easy adaptability of children. To them, marriage was just another adventure, another change in a life that had already transformed dramatically in 3 weeks. They didn't understand the price their mother had just paid, the freedom she'd sacrificed, the cage she'd voluntarily entered, and Isabella would make sure they never had to, because that's what mothers did. They carried the weight so their children could fly. They made impossible choices so their babies could stay innocent. They married dangerous men so their kids could be safe, even when it meant losing themselves in the process. Lorenzo's hand found hers, squeezing gently. A promise, maybe, or a plea. Isabella squeezed back, sealing the agreement. In 4 weeks, she would become Mrs. Lorenzo Vieri, and may whatever powers existed help them all survive what came after. The wedding preparations consumed the estate like a beautiful, suffocating storm. Event planners materialized with fabric swatches and flower samples. Designers arrived with sketches for Isabella's dress, each more elaborate than the last. Guest lists were debated, revised, expanded until the celebration threatened to eclipse reason. Through it all, Isabella felt like she was watching someone else's life unfold. The Marchetti family sent their regrets, Marco announced one morning, scanning his tablet over breakfast. But the Russos confirmed, as did the O'Connells, surprisingly. The Irish are coming? Dante looked up from where he was helping Adrian build a waffle tower. That's significant. They usually avoid these things. They're curious, Lorenzo replied, his attention ostensibly on the newspaper, but Isabella knew he tracked every detail. A Vieri marriage is rare enough, one that also serves as a peace offering to the Castellinis. That's worth witnessing. More like they're hoping for drama, Mia interjected from her seat, mimicking the adults with uncanny accuracy. That's what Uncle Dante said yesterday. Dante had the grace to look sheepish. Little ears hear everything, apparently. Everything, Isabella confirmed dryly. Which is why we need to watch what we say around them. The twins had adapted to wedding preparations with typical childhood resilience. Mia was thrilled about being a flower girl, already practicing her walk down imaginary aisles. Adrian was less enthusiastic, but tolerated the fittings and discussions with patient resignation. Will there be other kids at the wedding? He asked now, syrup coating his chin. Or just grown-ups talking about boring stuff? There'll be other children, Lorenzo assured him. Some of our associates have kids around your age. You'll have people to play with. Associates' kids meant children of other crime families. Isabella's stomach tightened at the thought of Mia and Adrian mingling with that world, but she'd agreed to this. Had chosen protection over isolation. Now she had to live with the consequences. After breakfast, Lorenzo caught her arm gently as she headed toward the twins' playroom. Walk with me? We need to discuss something. The request was courteous, but Isabella heard the command beneath it. She nodded, following him through the mansion to his private study, a room she'd rarely entered since that first confrontation with Dominic. Lorenzo closed the door and moved to the bar, pouring coffee instead of his usual whiskey. The gesture spoke to the early hour and possibly to wanting a clear head for whatever conversation was coming. 3 weeks until the wedding, he said, handing her a cup. And we've barely talked about what comes after. You mean the marriage itself? Isabella accepted the coffee, grateful for something to hold. We agreed to separate rooms to keep things focused on the twins. We did. Lorenzo leaned against the desk, studying her with unsettling intensity. But we also need to discuss expectations, boundaries, how we present ourselves publicly versus privately. Publicly, we're a united front, Isabella said, repeating what they'd established early on. Affectionate, committed, devoted parents. We sell the image Dominic needs to rebuild his reputation. And privately? Isabella hesitated. The truth was, she didn't know. The past 3 weeks had blurred lines she'd thought were clear. Lorenzo was attentive but not pushy, present but respectful of her space. He made her laugh over dinner and consulted her on every decision affecting the twins. He was becoming less of a captor and more of a partner, which terrified her more than his initial control had. Privately, we're co-parents, she said finally. We coordinate on the twins, support each other when needed, but maintain our independence. Independence. Lorenzo tasted the word like wine. Is that what you want? Or what you think you should want? Does it matter? This isn't a real marriage, Lorenzo. It's a strategic alliance to protect our children. It's a legal marriage that binds us together for life, he corrected quietly. The strategy doesn't make it less real, Isabella, just more complicated. She set down the coffee cup with more force than intended. What do you want me to say? That I'm falling in love with you? That I've forgiven you for forcing us into this situation? That I'm happy about becoming the wife of a crime lord? I want you to be honest. Lorenzo's voice remained maddeningly calm. About what you feel, what you fear, what you need. Because we're walking into a marriage with too many secrets already. Let's at least be truthful with each other. The challenge hung between them. Isabella wanted to deflect, to maintain the walls that kept her safe. But looking at Lorenzo, really looking, she saw exhaustion beneath his composure. He was actually trying to build something functional from the wreckage of their circumstances. I'm terrified, she admitted quietly. Terrified that I'll lose myself in your world. That the twins will grow up thinking power and violence are normal. That you'll eventually see us as possessions instead of people. She paused, gathering courage. And I'm terrified that part of me is starting to want this. Want you. Despite everything I know I should feel. Lorenzo's expression shifted, surprise, heat, something tender that made Isabella's chest ache. You think wanting me is wrong? I think it's dangerous. We have chemistry, Lorenzo. We always did. But chemistry isn't love, it's not trust, and I can't build a life on attraction alone. Then build it on something else. Lorenzo moved closer, his presence overwhelming without being threatening. Build it on partnership, on shared goals, on the fact that we both want the same things for our children. And if that's not enough, then we figure it out as we go. Together. His hand reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with unexpected gentleness. I'm not asking for your love, Isabella. Not yet. But I am asking for your partnership, your honesty, your willingness to try. The vulnerability in his voice undid her. This wasn't the crime lord making demands. This was a man asking for a chance. Okay, Isabella breathed. I'll try. But you have to try too. No more secrets. No more decisions made without consulting me. We're equals in this, or it doesn't work. Equals, Lorenzo agreed. Partners. In all things. The moment stretched, loaded with possibility and peril. Then Lorenzo's phone shattered the intimacy with its harsh ring. He answered with visible reluctance, his expression darkening as he listened. When? How many? His voice went cold, lethal. Get everyone inside, full lockdown, now! He ended the call and turned to Isabella, his transformation complete. The vulnerable man vanished, replaced by the crime lord she'd always feared. We have a problem. Armed men approaching the estate perimeter. At least 6 vehicles, possibly more. Marco's initiating security protocols. Isabella's blood turned to ice. The twins are already being moved to the safe room with Maria and Dante. Come. Lorenzo was already moving, his hand finding hers with surprising gentleness, despite the urgency. You'll be with them, protected. They ran through hallways that suddenly seemed menacing, past guards materializing with weapons that made Isabella's stomach lurch. This was Lorenzo's world. The violence he'd promised to keep separate from their family, now crashing through the gates like a tsunami. The safe room held more people than last time. Dante stood near the reinforced door, armed and dangerous. Maria had both twins on a sofa, reading to them with forced calm. Several other staff members clustered in corners, their fear palpable. Mia looked up when Isabella rushed in, her small face confused. Mama, what's wrong? Why are we hiding again? Just being extra careful, baby. Isabella gathered both children close, breathing in their shampoo scent, grounding herself in their solid reality. Papa's making sure everything's safe. Is he fighting? Adrian's voice was small, frightened. He's protecting us, Lorenzo answered from the doorway, his tone gentle despite the tension radiating from his frame. And Uncle Marco is helping. We'll be fine. Promise? Mia demanded. I promise. Lorenzo crouched beside them, his hand resting on Adrian's head with infinite care. No one gets through to you. Not while I'm breathing. The vow was absolute, terrifying, and somehow reassuring in its savage certainty. I need to go, Lorenzo said quietly to Isabella. Help Marco coordinate our response. Will you be all right here? No, she wanted to scream. I won't be all right watching you walk into danger. But she was a mother before she was anything else, and mothers didn't fall apart when their children needed strength. We'll be fine, she said, proud her voice didn't shake. Go. Do what you need to do. Just She caught his hand, squeezing hard. Come back. The twins need you. And you? Lorenzo's eyes searched hers. Do you need me to come back? The question was unfair. Loaded with meaning she wasn't ready to unpack. But with danger circling and fear clawing at her throat, Isabella couldn't hide behind walls anymore. Yes, she whispered. I need you to come back. Something blazed in Lorenzo's expression. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a promise. Then he was gone, the reinforced door sealing them in with a decisive thunk. Time crawled. Dante prowled the room like a caged predator, checking his phone obsessively for updates that came in terse bursts. Isabella held the twins, reading stories in a voice that didn't betray her terror. Maria maintained calm efficiency, organizing snacks and activities to keep everyone distracted. Uncle Dante? Mia's voice pierced the tense silence. Are the bad people going to hurt Papa? Dante stopped pacing, his expression softening as he knelt beside his niece. Your Papa is the smartest, strongest, most dangerous man I know, Piccola. The bad people should be worried about him, not the other way around. But there's lots of them, Adrian pointed out with heartbreaking logic. Papa's just one person. Papa has Uncle Marco and all our guards, and he has something the bad people don't have. Dante tapped Adrian's chest gently. You and Mia and your mama. He'll fight 10 times harder because he's protecting you. That makes him basically unstoppable. The twins accepted this with the faith children have in their parents' invincibility. Isabella wished she could share their certainty. 45 minutes passed, then an hour. Dante's phone buzzed with increasing frequency, his expression cycling through concern, relief, and fury. They're pulling back, he announced finally. The vehicles are retreating, no shots fired on either side. Why? Isabella asked. Why attack and then retreat? They weren't attacking. They were testing. Dante's voice was grim. Seeing our response time, our security setup, how many men we have, gathering intelligence. For what? For whatever comes next. Dante met her gaze, his expression serious. Someone wanted to know how protected you and the twins are. Now they know. The implication settled like ice in Isabella's stomach. The wedding was in 3 weeks. Someone was planning something, timing it, preparing for an opportunity. Another 30 minutes crawled by before the door finally unsealed. Lorenzo entered, his suit dusty and face grim but otherwise unharmed. Isabella's relief was so intense it hurt. Papa! Both twins launched themselves at him. Lorenzo caught them, holding tight, his eyes closing briefly as though absorbing their solid reality. I'm here, Bambini. I'm fine. We're all fine. His gaze found Isabella over their heads. It's over. For now. Isabella read the truth in his expression. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night, after the twins were finally asleep, their bedtime stories extended by nervous energy and fear, Isabella found Lorenzo in his office, staring at security footage with Marco. The Volkov brothers, Marco was saying, pointing to freeze frames of the vehicles. Russian crime family. They've been trying to expand into our territory for months. And now they know exactly where the twins are kept during emergencies, Lorenzo replied, his voice like winter. They know our protocols, our weak points, our response patterns. We'll adjust everything. New procedures, different safe rooms, increased security. It won't be enough. Lorenzo's fist hit the desk with controlled violence. Not while we're visible targets. Not while every family in the city knows about my children and sees them as leverage. Then what do you want to do? Marco challenged. Cancel the wedding? Go to ground? Start a war with the Volkovs? I want my family safe. Whatever that takes. Isabella stepped into the room, done with being excluded from conversations about her children's lives. Then tell me the truth. All of it. How bad is this? Both men turned. Lorenzo's expression was carefully neutral, but Isabella had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. The truth is that my enemies now know my greatest weakness, he said quietly. You, Mia, Adrian, they know that threatening you is the fastest way to control me, and they'll absolutely use that. So what do? We accelerate the timeline, get married sooner, solidify the alliance with the Castellinis so we have their resources and protection backing us. And then, Lorenzo paused, his jaw tight. Then we consider relocating. somewhere the twins can grow up with less visibility. You want to leave New York? Isabella's voice rose. This is your empire, your territory. You'd give that up? For them? In a heartbeat. Lorenzo moved toward her, his hands finding her shoulders with gentle intensity. I told you once that my children come first. I meant it. If keeping them safe means walking away from everything I've built, I'll do it. The certainty in his voice stole her breath. This wasn't manipulation or strategy. This was a father choosing his children over his empire. But the wedding is in 3 weeks, Isabella protested. Dominic demanded a month. If we move it up, he'll think we're backing out, trying to undermine. Let me handle Dominic. Lorenzo's expression hardened. He'll understand that security trumps his timeline, and if he doesn't, he can go to hell. Marco cleared his throat. I'll contact the Castellinis, explain the situation. See if we can move the wedding to next week without causing a political incident. Do it. Lorenzo's attention never wavered from Isabella. I know this is happening fast, faster than we planned, but our children's safety matters more than my comfort level, Isabella finished. I know, I agree. Let's do whatever keeps them protected. Something in Lorenzo's expression softened. You're stronger than you know. I'm a mother. We're all strong when we have to be. Isabella stepped back, needing space to think. What about the twins? How do we explain accelerating everything? We tell them the truth. An age-appropriate version, anyway. That we're moving the wedding up because we're excited to be a family. That it's a good surprise, not a scary one. Will they believe that? They believe us when we tell them they're safe. They trust us. We have to honor that trust by actually keeping them safe. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on Isabella's chest. She'd spent 3 years protecting the twins alone, making decisions based on limited resources and constant fear. Now she had help, dangerous, complicated, criminal help, but help nonetheless. Okay, she said finally, let's do this. Move up the wedding, solidify the alliance, and then we figure out what comes next, together. Together, Lorenzo echoed, and the word felt like a vow. The next week was chaos incarnate. The wedding date moved up to 7 days away, compressing months of planning into frantic activity. Dominic Castellini was surprisingly accommodating once Marco explained the security concerns, even offering additional protection resources for the ceremony. He sees the value in keeping your children alive, Marco explained when Isabella questioned the cooperation. Dead heirs don't strengthen alliances, protected ones do. Pepes. The pragmatism was chilling, but Isabella was learning to navigate this world's brutal logic. Her wedding dress arrived 3 days before the ceremony, ivory silk that managed to be both elegant and understated, appropriate for a bride who was also a mother. The seamstress had worked miracles adjusting it to fit Isabella's timeline. You look like a princess, Mia breathed when Isabella tried it on for the twins' approval. The prettiest princess ever. Oh, Mama's always pretty, Adrian said loyally, then reconsidered. But extra pretty in that dress. Isabella's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. This should be joyful, preparing to marry, her children excited, a future unfolding. Instead, it was strategic necessity wrapped in white silk and fear. Lorenzo found her in the twins' playroom that evening, watching them build block towers with the absorbed concentration of children blissfully unaware of adult complexities. Having second thoughts? He asked quietly. 100 thoughts, more like. Isabella kept her voice low, not wanting to disturb the twins. But no, I'm committed. For them. And for us? Lorenzo's question was careful, probing. Is there any part of you that wants this marriage for reasons beyond protection? Isabella watched Mia explain architectural principles to Adrian with complete seriousness, saw her son nod along with patient indulgence. They were so perfect, so innocent. And she'd do anything, marry anyone, sacrifice everything, to keep them that way. I don't know yet, she admitted honestly. Ask me again in 6 months, after we've actually lived as husband and wife instead of just co-parents playing house. Fair enough. Lorenzo settled beside her on the floor, close enough that their shoulders touched. For what it's worth, I hope you find reasons beyond duty. I hope we build something real. Why? Isabella turned to face him fully. You could have any woman you want. Why hope for something genuine with someone you had to blackmail into marrying you? I didn't blackmail you. Dominic did. You went along with it. Because the alternative was worse. Lorenzo's hand found hers, threading their fingers together. And because despite the circumstances, despite the strategy and necessity, I want you, Isabella. I wanted you 3 years ago. I want you now. And I'm willing to wait however long it takes for you to want me back, freely, without coercion. The honesty in his voice was devastating. Isabella wanted to dismiss it, to protect herself with skepticism and distance. But looking into Lorenzo's eyes, she saw the truth of his words reflected back. He meant it, every word. You're making this very hard, she whispered. Good. I'd hate to be forgettable. Lorenzo's smile was slight, self-deprecating. I'm fighting for something here, Isabella. For us. For the possibility that we might actually be happy together instead of just functional. And if we're not? If we try and fail? Then at least we tried. At least we gave our children parents who attempted to build something instead of just enduring each other. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm not asking for guarantees, just for honest effort. Can you give me that? Isabella thought about the past month, about Lorenzo singing Italian lullabies and teaching Adrian chess, about him consulting her on every decision, respecting her boundaries, trying desperately to be better than his reputation, about the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious instead of just necessary. Yes, she said finally. I can give you honest effort. I can try. That's all I'm asking. Lorenzo lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt more intimate than it should. Thank you. The twins' laughter drew their attention back to the block tower, which had grown precariously tall. Mia was adding one final block when the whole structure collapsed with spectacular chaos. No! Mia wailed dramatically. We almost made it to the ceiling. We can rebuild, Adrian said pragmatically. Better this time. We learned what doesn't work. Lorenzo's eyes met Isabella's, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, hope. They were like that block tower, built quickly under pressure, structurally questionable, likely to collapse under the wrong stress. But maybe, with effort and learning and genuine partnership, they could rebuild into something stronger, something that might actually last. Come on, Lorenzo said, standing and offering Isabella his hand. Let's help them rebuild. Show them that failure isn't permanent if you're willing to try again. Isabella took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. Together, they joined their children on the floor, building something fragile and hopeful from blocks and possibility. In 3 days, she would marry Lorenzo Vieri, would bind herself legally and permanently to a man who lived in shadows and violence, would become part of a world she'd spent 3 years fleeing. But looking at him now, patient and gentle as he helped their son place blocks with care, Isabella felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying and real. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could build something genuine from strategic necessity, or maybe they'd collapse like the twins' tower, spectacular and devastating. Either way, Isabella was committed now. For better or worse, she was choosing this, choosing him, choosing the possibility of partnership over the certainty of isolation. The wedding was 3 days away, and for the first time since Dominic Castellini had walked into their lives with demands and threats, Isabella felt something beyond resignation. She felt hope, fragile and cautious, but real. And that terrified her more than any threat ever could, because hope meant vulnerability, meant opening herself to disappointment and heartbreak, meant believing that Lorenzo Vieri, crime lord, dangerous man, father of her children, might actually be capable of the love he claimed to want. Time would tell if her hope was justified or just another beautiful lie in a world built on deception. But Isabella Cruz had survived poverty, single motherhood, and 3 years of running. She could survive hope too, even if it destroyed her in the process. The morning of the wedding arrived with crystalline autumn sunlight that made the estate's gardens look like something from a fairy tale. Isabella woke early, her stomach a tangle of nerves and anticipation, and found a note slipped under her door in Lorenzo's precise handwriting. Today we choose each other. Everything else is just ceremony. L. She pressed the note to her chest, breathing through the emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. 3 days had passed in a blur of final preparations, and quiet moments stolen with Lorenzo, conversations that stretched late into the night, his hand finding hers across dinner tables, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. Something was growing between them, something real and terrifying and absolutely impossible to ignore. Maria bustled in with coffee and warm pastries, her eyes suspiciously bright. The twins are already up, pestering Dante about when they can put on their fancy clothes, and your dress is pressed and ready. How are you feeling? Terrified, Isabella admitted. Hopeful, completely overwhelmed, all of it at once. That sounds about right for a bride. Maria's smile was gentle. For what it's worth, I've worked for Mr. Vieri for 15 years. I've never seen him like this, softer, more present, actually happy. You've changed him, Miss Cruz, in all the best ways. He's changed me too, Isabella whispered. I'm just not sure if that's good or dangerous. Maybe it's both. Maybe the best things always are. 2 hours later, Isabella stood in her ivory dress while a team of stylists worked their magic. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, loose curls framing her face. Makeup enhanced without transforming. She still looked like herself, just polished to shine. The twins burst in wearing matching formal wear that made Isabella's throat close with love. Mia twirled in her flower girl dress, a confection of blush pink that made her look like a tiny princess. Adrian tugged at his miniature suit, uncomfortable but undeniably handsome. Mama, you're so pretty, Mia breathed, her eyes wide. Papa's gonna cry when he sees you. Papa doesn't cry, Adrian corrected with 3-year-old certainty. Everyone cries at weddings, Mia insisted. It's a rule. Isabella gathered them both close, breathing in their familiar scent. You two are the best parts of my life. You know that, right? Everything I do is for you. We know, Mama. Adrian's small hand patted her arm. And we love you, and Papa, and Uncle Marco, and Uncle Dante. We're a family now, a real one. The simplicity of his acceptance destroyed her. Isabella blinked back tears, unwilling to ruin her makeup before the ceremony even started. Dante appeared in the doorway, looking sharp in his tuxedo and uncharacteristically serious. It's time. The guests are seated. Lorenzo's at the altar looking like he's about to face a firing squad, which is basically what a Vieri wedding feels like. His expression softened. You look beautiful, Isabella, truly. Thank you for everything, for accepting us, for protecting the twins, for being the family I didn't know we needed. We're the ones who should thank you, Dante replied quietly. You gave Lorenzo something he'd given up hoping for, a reason to be better, and you gave us those 2 perfect kids to spoil. We're the lucky ones here. The ceremony was being held in the estate's formal gardens, transformed into an elegant wonderland of white flowers and golden light. 200 guests filled white chairs, crime families from across the East Coast, all dressed in their finest, all watching with calculating eyes. This wasn't just a wedding. It was political theater, a display of power and alliance that would ripple through the criminal underworld for years. Isabella took her position at the garden entrance, her hand trembling slightly on Dante's arm. He'd volunteered to walk her down the aisle, a gesture that had made her cry when he'd offered. You've got this, he murmured. Just look at Lorenzo, forget everyone else. This moment is yours. The music started, a string quartet playing something classical and beautiful. Mia went first, scattering rose petals with intense concentration and theatrical flair. Adrian followed, carrying the rings on a small pillow, with the solemnity of someone entrusted with sacred treasure. Then it was Isabella's turn. She stepped into the garden and everything else fell away. The 200 guests, the political implications, the danger circling their lives. None of it mattered, because at the end of the aisle, standing beneath an arch of white roses, was Lorenzo. He wore a black tuxedo that made him look devastating, elegant, dangerous, but his eyes held only tenderness as he watched her approach. And when she was close enough to see his expression clearly, Isabella realized Mia had been right. Lorenzo Vieri was crying, not sobbing, just 2 tears tracking down his face that he didn't bother to wipe away. He smiled through them, his hand extended to take hers as Dante transferred her care with a gentle squeeze of her fingers. You're breathtaking, Lorenzo whispered, his voice rough with emotion. And you're mine. Finally, officially mine. We're each other's, Isabella corrected softly. That was the deal. Best deal I've ever made. The officiant began the ceremony, but Isabella barely heard the words. She was lost in Lorenzo's eyes, in the warmth of his hand holding hers, in the reality that this was happening. She was marrying this man, binding her life to his, choosing partnership over fear. Do you, Lorenzo Vieri, take Isabella Cruz to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? I do. Lorenzo's voice carried absolute certainty. I absolutely do. And do you, Isabella Cruz, take Lorenzo Vieri to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? Isabella looked at Lorenzo, really looked. She saw the crime lord and the father, the dangerous man and the one who sang lullabies in Italian, the one who'd forced her hand and the one who was trying desperately to earn her love freely. She saw complexity and contradiction, darkness and hope, everything she feared and everything she was beginning to want. I do, she said clearly. I choose you. I choose us. Something blazed in Lorenzo's expression. Triumph, gratitude, love so fierce it took her breath. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Lorenzo, you may kiss your bride. Lorenzo's hands cupped her face with infinite gentleness. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me this chance. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserved it. Then he kissed her, and the world disappeared into sensation and heat. It was tender and consuming, a promise and a claiming all at once. Isabella melted into it, into him, letting herself feel everything she'd been fighting for weeks. Want, hope, the terrifying possibility of love. The guests erupted into applause. Mia cheered loudly, Adrian clapped with dutiful enthusiasm, and Isabella and Lorenzo pulled apart slowly, smiling at each other like fools. Hello, husband, Isabella said. Hello, wife. Lorenzo's smile was transformative. Ready to face 200 criminals pretending to be happy for us? As long as you're beside me. Always. That's the vow I just made, and I keep my promises. The reception was elaborate beyond anything Isabella had imagined. A 10-course meal, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than her monthly rent used to be, and a band that drew people onto the dance floor in elegant waves. The twins were in heaven, running between tables with other children, stuffing themselves with cake, and generally being adorable. Isabella danced with Lorenzo beneath strings of lights that turned the garden magical. His hand at her waist felt possessive and right, his body moving with hers in perfect rhythm. See anyone you recognize? Lorenzo murmured against her ear. Isabella scanned the crowd and felt her stomach drop. Dominic Castellini sat at a prominent table, looking satisfied. The Russo family matriarch watched with calculating eyes. And in the corner, partly hidden by shadows, were men she recognized from news reports. The Volkov brothers, the Russians who'd tested their security. Why are they here? Isabella's voice tightened. After they threatened us. You invited them? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Lorenzo replied calmly. They're being watched by Marco's best men, and their presence here signals acceptance. They've acknowledged our marriage, our alliance, our strength. It's actually a good sign. It doesn't feel good. It feels dangerous. Welcome to my world, Mrs. Vieri, where weddings double as business meetings and every smile hides an agenda. Lorenzo's hand tightened on her waist. But not ours. Our marriage is real, regardless of the theater surrounding it. Is it? Isabella challenged quietly. Real? Or just less fake than it could be? Lorenzo stopped dancing, his eyes searching hers with uncomfortable intensity. You tell me. What do you feel right now, in this moment? Truth only. Isabella's heart hammered. The honest answer was complicated, messy, terrifying. But Lorenzo had asked for truth, and she'd promised honest effort. I feel scared, she admitted. Scared of losing myself in you. Scared of what your world will do to our children. Scared that I'm falling for you despite every logical reason not to. She paused, gathering courage. But I also feel safe, protected. Like maybe, possibly, we could actually build something real instead of just surviving together. Lorenzo's expression softened into something achingly tender. That's all I'm asking for. The possibility. The chance. He pulled her closer, their bodies aligned perfectly. I'm falling too, Isabella. Have been since I saw you in that rain-soaked street with our children. Maybe even before that, 3 years ago, when you first smiled at me. That's just attraction. Chemistry. It's a start. Lorenzo's lips brushed her temple. We'll build the rest as we go. One day, one choice, one moment of honesty at a time. The song ended, transitioning into something faster. Marco appeared, claiming Isabella for a dance, while Dante swept Lorenzo into an absurd waltz that made the twins giggle uncontrollably. You did well today, Marco said as they moved through the steps. Handled the political nightmare with grace. Even Dominic seemed satisfied. Is he? Or is he planning something we can't see yet? Marco's expression turned assessing. You're learning. That's good. Questioning everything is how you survive in this world. He paused, choosing words carefully. For what it's worth, I think Lorenzo's genuinely trying. I've known him his whole life, and I've never seen him work this hard to be better. That's because of you. Don't underestimate your influence. Influence isn't love. No, but it's a foundation to build on. Marco spun her expertly. Give it time, Isabella. Let him prove himself. You might be surprised by what you find. The evening wore on with toasts and laughter, and the twins eventually falling asleep on a sofa, exhausted by excitement and sugar. Isabella watched Lorenzo carry Adrian to bed while Dante handled Mia, both men gentle and competent with the sleeping children. Your family is beautiful, a woman's voice said from behind her. Isabella turned to find Sofia Castellini, Dominic's niece and Lorenzo's former fiancée, watching the scene with unreadable eyes. She was stunning in a navy dress, her dark hair swept into an elegant chignon. Thank you, Isabella said carefully, unsure where this conversation was heading. I owe you gratitude, actually. Sofia's smile was genuine. You freed me from a marriage I didn't want, gave me the chance to be with the man I actually love. Lorenzo mentioned you had someone. Marcus. He works in my uncle's organization, brilliant with numbers and logistics. We've been in love for 2 years but couldn't act on it because of family politics. Sofia's expression softened. Your existence changed everything, gave both Lorenzo and me what we actually wanted. I'm glad something good came from this mess. More than you know. Lorenzo is happier than I've ever seen him. He smiles now, laughs with his brothers, actually looks forward to going home instead of burying himself in work. Sofia touched Isabella's arm lightly. Don't let the circumstances make you doubt what you have. I've seen enough arranged marriages to know when there's real feeling underneath. You two have it. Don't waste it. The unexpected kindness made Isabella's eyes burn. Thank you for understanding, for not hating me for ruining your engagement. You didn't ruin anything. You revealed truth. Sofia smiled. Now go dance with your husband. The night's almost over, and tomorrow you start building your actual life together. Isabella found Lorenzo saying goodbye to guests, playing the gracious host with practiced ease. But when he saw her approaching, his entire face transformed, softening, warming, becoming genuine. Dance with me again? She asked. One more before everyone leaves? I'll dance with you until dawn if you want. Lorenzo drew her close as the band struck up something slow and romantic. Having regrets yet? Constantly, but none about marrying you. Isabella rested her head against his chest, hearing his heart beat steady and strong. This is insane. All of it. But maybe insane is better than safe and lonely. I'll take insane with you over sane without you any day. They swayed together as the garden slowly emptied, guests departing with varying levels of sincerity in their congratulations. Finally, it was just family. Marco and Dante, Maria and the house staff cleaning up quietly, and Isabella and Lorenzo still moving to music only they could hear. What happens now? Isabella asked quietly. Tomorrow. Next week. The rest of our lives. What does it actually look like? We figure it out together, Lorenzo replied. We raise our children. We learn to trust each other. We build something neither of us expected but both of us need. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. And we take it one day at a time. No expectations beyond honesty and effort. And love? Do we hope for that too? Lorenzo's hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with reverent gentleness. I already love you, Isabella. Have for a while now, even though I know it's too soon and too complicated and probably unwelcome. But it's true. So yes, I hope for love. I hope you'll eventually feel the same. The confession stole her breath. Isabella wanted to say it back, to match his vulnerability with her own. But the words stuck in her throat, too terrifying to release. I'm not there yet, she whispered instead, but I'm getting closer. Every day, every moment with you, I feel myself falling despite everything telling me not to. Then fall, Lorenzo urged softly. I'll catch you, I promise. The next morning, Isabella woke in Lorenzo's bed for the first time, wrapped in expensive sheets and her husband's arms. Sometime during the night, they'd migrated to the same room, seeking warmth and comfort without discussion or decision. She'd slept better than she had in years. Lorenzo stirred, his arms tightening around her. Good morning, wife. Good morning, husband. Isabella turned to face him, studying his features in the early light. He looked younger like this, vulnerable and unguarded. We should probably get up. The twins will be awake soon. Let Maria handle breakfast for once. I want to just hold you a little longer. So Isabella stayed, letting herself be held, feeling the steady rhythm of Lorenzo's breathing, the solid warmth of his body against hers. This was intimacy without pressure, closeness without demands. It was startlingly peaceful. What are you thinking? Lorenzo asked after a comfortable silence. That this is nice, being here with you, not fighting it anymore. Just wait until I start snoring or hogging the blankets. You'll fight it then. Isabella laughed, the sound surprising her. We haven't even discussed sleeping arrangements. I thought we agreed on separate rooms. We did, but you're welcome in mine any time, and I'm welcome in yours, I hope. Very welcome, Isabella admitted. Turns out I sleep better when you're close. Same. Who knew a crime lord and his reluctant wife would be such compatible sleepers? Compatible in other ways too, apparently. Isabella's hand rested on his chest, feeling his heart beat beneath her palm. You're not what I expected, Lorenzo. Not entirely, anyway. What did you expect? A monster. Someone who'd control and dominate and never listen. But you're trying so hard to be better. To be the father the twins deserve. The husband I might actually want instead of just tolerate. Lorenzo's expression turned serious. I'm not a good man, Isabella. My hands are stained with things you don't want to know about. My business involves violence and moral compromise and decisions that haunt me. I can't change that past. I know, but you can choose how you move forward, how you treat your family, what kind of father you are. Isabella's hand found his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. You're choosing to be better. That matters more than perfect. I'll keep choosing better every day, for you and the twins. Lorenzo kissed her palm. That's my promise. My vow. The twins burst into the room without knocking, jumping on the bed with abandon and destroying the peaceful moment with joyful chaos. Mama, Papa, you're in the same bed, Mia announced with 3-year-old directness. Because married people share beds sometimes, Lorenzo explained calmly, pulling both children into a tangled hug. Did you sleep well, Bambini? So good, Adrian reported. I dreamed about cake. Me too, Mia agreed. The biggest cake in the world. Can we have cake for breakfast? Absolutely not, Isabella laughed. Real food first, then maybe cake for dessert later. They spent the morning as a family, breakfast together, playing in the garden, reading stories in the library. It was startlingly normal, almost boring in its domesticity. And it was perfect. That afternoon, while the twins napped, Lorenzo took Isabella to his office with unusual solemnity. Papers covered his desk, legal documents, contracts, things that made Isabella's stomach tighten with apprehension. What's all this? Our future. Multiple options laid out for us to discuss and decide together. Lorenzo gestured to the documents. Option 1. We stay in New York, maintain high security, and I gradually transfer more operational control to Marco so I can be more present with the family. Risk level, moderate to high. Option 2? Isabella's voice was tight. We relocate to the estate I own in Tuscany, Beautiful countryside, excellent schools, enough distance from my business that the twins can grow up relatively normal. I'd still run operations remotely, but with significantly reduced visibility, risk level, low to moderate. And option 3? Lorenzo's expression was carefully neutral. I walk away entirely. Sell my interest to Marco and Dante, take the family somewhere completely removed from this world, and start over as civilians. Risk level, minimal, but it means abandoning everything I've built. Isabella stared at him, searching for the catch. You'd really do that? Give up your entire empire? For my children's safety? In a heartbeat. For a real marriage instead of a strategic one? Absolutely. Lorenzo's eyes held hers with devastating honesty. I meant what I said, Isabella. You and the twins come first. If you want out of this world, we'll get out, together. The offer was staggering, sacrificial. Everything she'd wanted when she first ran 3 years ago, now laid at her feet freely. But something had changed in those 3 years. Isabella had changed. What do you want? She asked carefully. Not what's strategic or safe or best for everyone else. What do you actually want? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. I want to keep some part of what I've built. It's who I am, for better or worse. But I also want my children to grow up without fear, and I want you to be happy instead of just surviving. He focused on her again. So I'd choose option 2, relocate to Italy, maintain oversight of the business remotely, but live far enough away that the twins can have childhood instead of just security protocols. What about Marco and Dante? Your brothers? Would visit often, would help run things here while I'm abroad. They understand that family comes first. Lorenzo reached for her hand. But this isn't my decision alone, it's ours. Both of us have to choose the path forward. Isabella looked at the documents representing 3 completely different futures. Staying meant danger and familiarity. Italy meant safety and adjustment. Civilian life meant peace, and Lorenzo's potential resentment for what he'd sacrificed. I don't want you to resent me, she said quietly. If you give up everything for us, and then hate me for it later, that won't happen. Because it wouldn't be giving up for you. It would be choosing you. There's a difference. Lorenzo's hand squeezed hers. Whatever we decide together. No resentment, just partnership. Isabella thought about Mia and Adrian, about the kind of childhood she wanted for them. Thought about the garden and the library and the security that suffocated. Thought about Lorenzo, trying so hard to balance who he was with who he wanted to be. Italy, she decided. Option 2. We relocate to Tuscany. You maintain enough business involvement to stay engaged but not consumed. The twins grow up with more freedom but still protected. And we... She paused, gathering courage. We build a real marriage in a place that isn't weighed down by New York's dangers and politics. Lorenzo's relief was palpable. You're sure? It means leaving the only home you've known, learning a new language, adjusting to a completely different life. I've been adjusting my whole life. This time I'm doing it with resources and support instead of alone. Isabella smiled. Besides, the twins should know their Italian heritage, and I've always wanted to see Tuscany. Then Tuscany it is. Lorenzo pulled her into his arms, holding tight. We'll leave within the month. Give Marco time to transition operations. Get the twins settled. Start fresh in a place where we're just a family instead of a strategic alliance. Will it really be that simple? Probably not, but we'll face complications together. As partners. As husband and wife. Lorenzo pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Thank you. For choosing us. For giving this marriage a real chance instead of just enduring it. Thank you for making it worth choosing. They kissed then, slow and deep, sealing the decision with tenderness and heat. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Lorenzo rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he whispered. I know it's still too soon for you to say it back, but I wanted you to know what I feel is real. It's not strategy or necessity, it's just truth. Isabella's heart cracked open, letting in light and feeling and terrifying vulnerability. She wasn't quite ready to say the words back, but she was closer than she'd ever been. Ask me again in Italy, she said softly, after we've built our life there, after the twins are settled and happy. after we've proven we can actually do this. Ask me then, and I think my answer might surprise you. I'll hold you to that, Mrs. Vieri. I'm counting on it, Mr. Vieri. 6 months later, Isabella stood in the garden of their Tuscan estate, watching the twins chase butterflies through lavender fields that seemed to stretch forever. The villa was old stone and climbing roses, with gardens that put the New York estate to shame and views that made her breath catch every morning. Lorenzo had kept his promise. He ran his business remotely, traveling to New York only when absolutely necessary, and always returning within days instead of weeks. Marco and Dante visited monthly, spoiling the twins relentlessly and maintaining the connection to family. The twins had flourished. Mia spoke Italian with the rapid fluency of childhood, chattering with the local children in the village school she attended. Adrian had discovered a love of painting, the villa's converted studio filled with his colorful explorations. They were happy, genuinely, simply happy. And Isabella had discovered something she hadn't expected, peace. Not the absence of challenge or difficulty. They still argued sometimes, still navigated the complexities of merging two lives into one functional whole. But the underlying foundation was solid. Trust had grown, partnership had deepened, and love, that terrifying, beautiful thing, had blossomed quietly between them like the roses climbing their villa walls. Lorenzo found her in the garden as the sun painted everything golden. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts, wife. Just thinking how different everything is from 6 months ago, how far we've come. Any regrets?" "Not a single one." Isabella turned in his arms, smiling up at the man who'd become her partner in every sense. "You've kept every promise. Been the father the twins needed, the husband I didn't know I wanted. You've proven yourself 1,000 times over. And you've given me everything, a family, a purpose beyond power, a reason to be better than I was." Lorenzo's hand cupped her face with familiar tenderness. "I asked you once to ask me something in Italy, after we'd built our life here. Do you remember?" Isabella's heart raced. "I remember. Then I'm asking now." "What's your answer, Isabella? Do you love me? Not because you have to, not out of obligation or strategy, but because you choose to?" The question hung between them like sunrise, full of possibility and promise and the terrifying beauty of truth. Isabella looked into Lorenzo's eyes and saw everything that mattered. The father reading bedtime stories in Italian, the husband who consulted her on every decision, the man who'd given up an empire for his family's happiness, the partner who'd earned her trust one honest moment at a time. She saw the crime lord and the devoted father, the dangerous man and the gentle one, all the contradictions and complexities that made up Lorenzo Vieri, her husband, her children's father, the man she'd chosen despite every logical reason not to. "Yes," she breathed, the word coming easily now. "I love you, Lorenzo. Completely, impossibly, against all odds and despite all the reasons I shouldn't. I love you." Lorenzo's smile could have lit the world. "Say it again." "I love you." "Once more." "I love you." Isabella laughed, joy bubbling up from somewhere deep and true. "I love you, I love you, I love you. Happy now?" Deliriously. Lorenzo kissed her then, pouring everything into it, gratitude and passion and promises for all the years ahead. The twins found them like that, wrapped in each other beneath the Tuscan sun, and immediately demanded group hugs. Lorenzo scooped them both up with practiced ease, and Isabella completed the circle, all four of them tangled together in love and laughter. This was family. Not the cage Isabella had feared, but the freedom she'd always wanted. Not perfect or simple, but real and chosen, and absolutely worth every complicated step that had brought them here. "Mama, can we have gelato for dinner?" Mia asked, hopefully. "Absolutely not," Isabella replied. "But it's a special day," Adrian argued. "Every day is special here," Lorenzo corrected gently. "That's what makes it ordinary. And ordinary days have rules about vegetables before dessert." Both twins groaned dramatically, but accepted the verdict. They'd learned that their parents were unified, that no meant no regardless of who asked, and that love included boundaries just as much as indulgence. They'd also learned that they were safe, protected, cherished beyond measure by parents who'd fought their way to partnership and were building something extraordinary from the wreckage of forced circumstances. That night, after the twins were asleep and the villa was quiet, Isabella and Lorenzo sat on their balcony watching stars emerge over vineyard-covered hills. "Do you ever miss New York?" Lorenzo asked. "The energy, the familiarity?" "Sometimes. But then I wake up to this view, watch the twins run free without security guards shadowing them, and I know we made the right choice." Isabella's hand found his. "What about you? Do you regret walking away from direct control?" "Not even a little. Marco's doing brilliantly, and I still have influence when needed. But what I have here, you, the children, an actual life instead of just existence, that's worth more than any empire." Lorenzo lifted her hand to his lips. "Thank you for giving me this, for choosing partnership over fear, for loving me despite everything. Thank you for earning it, for proving that change is possible, for being the man I needed instead of just the one I feared." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the night deepen around them. Somewhere in the villa, their children slept peacefully. In New York, Lorenzo's brothers maintained the legacy he'd built. And here, in this slice of Italian paradise, two people who'd started as strangers bound by biology had become genuine partners. The storm that had brought them together had long since passed. The rain that had revealed hidden children was now just memory. The fear and coercion that had forced their marriage had transformed into choice and commitment freely given. Isabella Cruz had run from Lorenzo Vieri 3 years ago, terrified of being consumed by his darkness. Now Isabella Vieri chose him every day, had discovered light in unexpected places, and built a family from hope instead of fear. They hadn't erased the complications. Lorenzo was still involved in business that existed in shadows. Isabella still worried about the twins' future exposure to that world. They still navigated the complexities of merging different values and backgrounds into one functional whole. But they did it together, as partners, as lovers, as parents who'd learned that sometimes the cages we fear become homes when we stop running and start building. "I love you," Lorenzo said into the starlit darkness. "Today, tomorrow, every day after. That's my vow." "I love you too," Isabella replied, the words as natural as breathing now, through complications and compromises, through the gray areas where right and wrong blur together. "I choose you. I choose us. Always." And in a villa in Tuscany, far from the rain-soaked Manhattan street where their lives had collided with the force of destiny, two people who'd started as strangers held each other close and watched the stars emerge. Not perfect, not innocent, but real. And absolutely, beautifully, impossibly in love. The end of their storm was just the beginning of their story. And Isabella and Lorenzo Vieri were ready to write every chapter together. One honest choice, one shared moment, one act of love at a time. The twins would grow up knowing both parents chose each other and chose them, every single day. They would learn that love isn't just romance, but partnership, trust, and the willingness to build something better than what you started with. And someday, when Mia and Adrian were old enough to understand, they would hear the story of how their parents met in a storm, were forced together by circumstance, and chose to transform obligation into devotion. It was messy, complicated, absolutely imperfect, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect enough.